Hello, everyone. Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn as Hades, the God of the Underworld, Part 6. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
The Epic of Heroes, the tale of the first man who rose against the darkness, the king who united tribes and held back the monstrous tide, the first hero. His name echoed through the annals of time like thunder trapped in the bones of mountains. It was said that the goddess Athena herself had written the epic in golden script, engraved on the walls of her hidden sanctuary, a place mortals could not reach, yet whose influence shaped every bard's tale and every child's dream of valor. She had watched him from afar, silent and curious at first, but over time, the goddess of wisdom became captivated, no, obsessed, with a mortal man named Helios. Not because he wielded magic or power, but because he stood without them. He stood against monsters born of divine wrath. He stood when death was certain, and in dying, he changed the course of the world. A man who started the era of humanity with his birth and began the age of heroes with his death. It had been centuries since Helios fell in battle, his body buried but eternally entombed in the hearts of mankind. Over time, the kingdom of Harion, the kingdom he had forged with blood and fire, dwindled into a city-state, a powerful remnant of the world's beginning. However, Harion remained a global power that terrified many states. It remained the land of heroes and the capital state of underworld gods' believers. Even as empires rose and fell, Harion endured like a scar that would not fade. Nestled between mountains and rivers, Harion had become a land of philosophers and soldiers, of old laws and older legends. Pilgrims came from distant shores just to walk its ancient avenues, where the stones still bore the heat of Helios' final march. And within Harion, in the upper quarter reserved for the divine, stood the temple of Hecate. It was a towering, spired cathedral of onyx and silver. Torches burned with purple flames, and beneath the high arch of its inner sanctum, the statue of Hecate loomed, serene and mysterious. Her triple faces, carved from human imagination, stared into the past, present, and future. In her hand she held a lamp that never extinguished, the flame of forewarning, as it was known to the faithful. There, kneeling before her, was priest Malchier, the high seer of Harion. Robed in black and violet, his face gaunt with sleepless nights, he bowed low until his forehead touched the obsidian floor. The scent of lavender and ash lingered around him, remnants of the offerings burned earlier that morning. He had been praying, as he did every dusk, for clarity, for signs. Then, it happened. The flame in Hecate's statue flared, casting the room in flickering violet light. A chill swept through the chamber, though no wind had entered. Malchier's eyes snapped open. The world around him faded. Darkness fell. Then, a voice, not a sound, but a presence, entered his mind like a whisper made of lightning. Malchier. He trembled. He knew the voice of the goddess. A great war comes, fire and blood will soak the soil of mortals. Kingdoms will burn, and faiths will be tested. You must prepare. As suddenly as it began, the presence vanished. Malchier fell backward, gasping. The flame in the statue dimmed to its original glow, as if nothing had occurred. But the priest sat there frozen, drenched in sweat, his chest heaving. For a moment, he could not speak. But soon, he rose with the swiftness of panic, robes trailing behind him as he moved through the candlelit halls. Outside, a young worshipper, perhaps no older than 20, waited patiently beside a basin of holy water. Malchier approached him and gripped his shoulder. His eyes burned with purpose. "Go," he said. "Go to the city lord. Tell him the flame has spoken. The goddess has foreseen a war that will consume the world. He must ready the armies. Prepare the walls. Begin the summoning rites of the patrons. We must awaken the sentinels." The worshipper blinked. The sentinels, my lord? They have not been called since the age of Helios, Malchier interrupted. Sentinels. Elite warriors descended from the soldiers who accompanied Helios in his final moments. The strongest spear of Harion that can only be called upon when the state is on the verge of being destroyed. Most of the time, they remained on Mount Helios, a mountain where people have built a temple along with the grave of Helios, guarding it. Rumor says that sentinels can even kill a divine spirit. Whether this is true or not, no one knows. And no one was willing to try and test it out. We don't have much time. Now the wheel turns again, and a war on a scale never seen since the fall of Helios may happen soon. The worshipper nodded with trembling reverence and sprinted down the stairs, disappearing into the street like a streak of smoke. Left alone in the sanctum, Melchior returned to the statue and knelt once more, his voice a whisper. "Lady Hecate, please, let us survive what is to come." That night, the bells of Harion rang for the first time in 100 years. The city lord, old and gray but still sharp-eyed, ordered the walls reinforced. The city gates were sealed. Smoke rose from smithies as weapons long rusted were reforged. The sacred texts of Helios were read aloud in the central plaza, reminding the people of the last time darkness had threatened the world. Harion is the city of heroes. No one here was born a coward. They were ready for war any time. And so, across Harion, as stars blinked overhead, families huddled in their homes. The winds felt colder. The air heavier. Priests in temples across the city lit purple flames in silence. Something was coming. Something ancient. And Harion, the city of beginnings, would once more be its first battleground. In a pitch-black space, separated from the very fabric of reality itself, Gaia can be seen sitting on a stone throne, eyes closed. Her beautiful figure was emphasized by a revealing white robe, her breath causing the very foundation of the world to bow in reverence. Too long has she waited. Waiting for this moment. The moment when her children would grow up and be able to defeat the Olympians. Then her eyes opened. And the world trembled. A single breath, one drawn through immortal lungs, echoed across the tapestry of existence. Earthquakes rolled beneath distant seas. Forests bowed as though in reverence. Volcanoes stirred, rumbling as if it were about to explode. Gaia inhaled. And in that breath, the mountains heard her. The deep roots of trees straightened in attention. The very tectonic plates groaned, shifting subtly as if they were her bones stretching awake from slumber. Suspended in that immeasurable realm beyond perception, her eyes, twin orbs of green and obsidian, reflecting both nurture and fury, opened wide and sharp. With a gaze capable of unraveling reality, she turned her face to Olympus. She saw the gilded marble spires, the nectar gardens, and the radiant halls of the gods who had once been her favorites. She saw the library of Métis, the lightning-forged throne of Zeus, and the simmering pools where gods feasted while the mortal world toiled. She stared. Unblinking. Unforgiving. It is time. Her voice never reached the ears of gods or men. No sound echoed in the mortal realm. But the core of the world quivered. Deep-sea creatures stirred. The animals of the land paused mid-motion. Even the stars in the sky twinkled in uncanny synchronization. Behind her, emerging like stone rising from the sea, came her children. The giants, born of the fusion between the underworld, the primordial sky and the primordial earth, stood tall and solemn. Each one bore a unique shape and strength, forged by nature's hand and godly will. Some were covered in scales made from volcanic rock, others had skins of polished obsidian. Horns curled like ancient mountain ranges, eyes blazed with molten hatred. Their height dwarfed mountains, and their breath carried the wind of continents. They were not monsters. Nor were they gods nor titans. They were Gaia's vengeance given form. At the very center stood the largest of them, Alcyoneus, the oldest, the tallest, the most silent. He carried no weapon, for he was a weapon. Where he walked, the earth bloomed and cracked simultaneously. Next to him was Porphyrion, with a crown of twisted branches and a cloak made from the hides of beasts extinct for millennia. There were 12 of them in total, 12 giants conceived with Hades, the lord of the underworld, each with a spark of sky, the life of earth and the inevitability of death within them. Her thoughts wandered to her daughter, whom she had grown fond of, Nycteria. The child born from the perfect union of the three realms and will one day, surely, transcend even primordials like her. However, perhaps it is the universe's way of restricting her. Nycteria grows slowly. While most gods were born adults, Nycteria was born a baby. While most gods already indulged in all sorts of depravity and succumbed to desires within 100 years, Nycteria was still struggling to walk straight. However, perhaps it is because of that phenomenon that Gaia's motherly instinct awakened, and she doted on her daughter too much. Unfortunately, she is currently in the underworld, and Hades would only bring her once every few years. Gaia's gaze lingered in that direction briefly, her lips pressing into a tight line, but then, she looked again to her warriors. "My sons," Gaia said, her voice thrumming through their souls like magma through stone. The time of Olympian excess has reached its end. The giants stood still. They had waited lifetimes in silence, slumbering beneath continents, hidden in caves older than mortal memory, shackled in mountain tombs and oceans deeper than words. But now they lifted their heads. Their eyes glowed. "Your blood is sacred," Gaia said, rising as she spoke, the womb of reality stirring around her. "Forged under the sky, from the womb of the world and the shadow of death. Your existence is nobler than any gods or titans. Now, we must punish them for what they have done to this world." One by one, the giants began to arm themselves. From caverns in the void, they pulled up ancient weapons forged in silence. Alcyoneus reached into the earth itself and pulled forth a spear made from the petrified spine of a sea beast. Porphyrion summoned lightning not from the sky but from underground, coiling it into a great bow with arrows that screamed as they were drawn. Others bore clubs made from fossilized forests, nets of woven stone, and chains rusted with the blood of Titan jailers. They readied armor that had not been worn since before the first Titanomachy, polished by lava and shadow. Gaia floated before them, growing with every breath she took. Her voice boomed, "Today, we shatter Olympus." Her hand stretched toward the dimensional veil separating their dark realm from the divine summit. "They perverted my land, insulted my authority," she said, eyes smoldering. "They drank from sacred springs and laughed while mortals screamed. They abandoned balance for vanity. They call themselves gods, but they are nothing but a mistake." The giants raised their weapons in unison. The space around them cracked. Reality fractured. The scent of rain and stone and blood filled the dark. "You will march upon the sky. You will break their temples. You will unseat their thrones. You will burn their false paradise down to its marble bones." A single, massive footstep fell forward. Alcyoneus moved first. Behind him, 11 others followed. The war was not yet declared to Olympus. But Gaia had spoken. And when the primordial earth breathes, even the gods must hold theirs. In the vastness of the underworld, deep within the core section where immortal souls shimmered like stars and divine law was etched into obsidian walls, the hanging fortress floated over the ever-turning city of Nox like a silent moon. Below it, entire districts thrived, homes carved from crystal, gardens blooming with eternal night flowers, and temples devoted to forgotten gods. What once was a land of sorrow and judgment had now become a sovereign realm, organized, prospering, and divine in both order and mystery. It was a reflection of its master. On the highest level of the fortress, through black stone archways guarded by river-born spirits and divine specters, lay the throne hall of Hades. And upon the throne, carved from midnight and adorned with underworld gold and sleeping gems, sat the god himself. Hades, king of the dead, master of souls, high patron of the chthonic realm. He sat not in shadow or silence, but in thought. On his lap sat a child, small, bright-eyed, brimming with divine energy barely contained in her mortal-sized form. Nycteria, daughter of Gaia and Hades, their most perfect creation. She was the youngest among their children, yet her aura shimmered with incomprehensible potential. Her hair curled around her shoulders like vines, and her eyes sparkled as she kicked her feet in the air, humming softly. She did not understand the weight of the silence in the room. But her joy was enough to make it bearable. In Hades' hand, his other hand, the one not gently supporting Nycteria, was a sphere the size of a golf ball. The breakdown sphere. It pulsed softly, a dim black-purple light flickering at its core like a trapped heartbeat. It was not divine, not mortal, not even magical in the traditional sense. It was conceptual, a condensation of laws and potential. Every breakthrough Hades had made in his long quest to surpass the limits of godhood, the limits placed even on those born from chaos, was embedded in this artifact. Every calculation, every forbidden theory, every metaphysical venture into the invisible border between God and something beyond. The breakdown sphere was the sum of his obsession. It could work. It should work. And yet, he stared at it. Something was missing. A component he could not name, a material or essence he could not quantify. Not divine ichor, not titan marrow, not chaos thread. Something unknowable, something perhaps yet to be discovered. Why doesn't it shine? Nycteria asked softly, her small hand reaching toward the orb. And Hecate's orb can shine. Hades looked at her. Her innocence was like an open flame in a world of frost. It's not ready, he replied, his voice like deep water over ancient stones. It lacks its heart. She pouted, then leaned her cheek against his chest. Will it help you fly? You don't need this to fly. Hades chuckled. Nycteria grumbled, then why can't I fly? Hades has no answer to that. But it has been theorized by him and Gaia that it is the universe's way of suppressing something that can break out of it. Despite clearly having the greatest potential, Nycteria has shown no remarkable abilities. Her power now, despite being centuries old, is still barely comparable to a divine spirit. Not to mention her physical and mental growth has been slowed down drastically, making her behave like a normal, mortal child. Hades smiled. Because you're still young. One day, you'll be able to do it, I promise. Really? Nycteria smiled brightly. Then I can't wait to grow up. Hades chuckled, a rare moment for the ever-silent and brooding. He does not brood, god of the underworld. At that moment, mist gathered before the throne. From the swirling gray stepped Hecate, her form briefly visible in the veil of fog. Her staff was alight with purple fire, and her cloak trailed behind her like liquid dusk. She bowed with a soft smile, her eyes shifting to Nycteria for a moment, who waved at her enthusiastically. Greetings, Hecate, Hades greeted, tucking the sphere away in the folds of his robes. I trust you've completed my command? Yes, my lord. I've completed your command, she said. The priest and Harion received my message. The city now knows the prophecy, war is coming. Hades nodded. Good, he said. Let them prepare. Let them prepare. They will surely be engulfed in this war against the giants. Just then, Hecate raised her head and asked, Will you not intervene, Lord Hades? Harion is still a state that believes in us. It has been with us since before kingdoms even rose. For a moment, Hades didn't speak. His gaze drifted beyond the throne room, through the walls, through the mists of the underworld, past the rivers and rebirth gates. His mind touched upon the memory of Helios, the mortal king whose soul he had watched cross from the river Styx to Lethe and then willingly cast himself into reincarnation. The first hero. The first man Hades truly admired. Harion does not need the gods then, and they don't need us now. Hades turned towards her. Do you believe so little of humanity? My lord, Hecate bit her lips, I just don't want to see that place fall. If it falls by its own strength or weakness, Hades interrupted, calmly. I will not intervene. Helios believed that humanity can conquer the stars. This war will show him that he is right. Hecate stared at him for a few moments but soon sighed in helplessness. Nycteria looked up at him again, puzzled by the seriousness of the voices around her. Will there be a big fight? She asked softly. Hecate smiled at the child, a rare gesture for the feared witch of the underworld. Yes, my lady. But if the world burns, the underworld will remain. And so will you. So you don't have to worry. The world will burn. Nycteria's eyes widened. Then I won't be able to play there anymore. Hecate chuckled softly. Yes, princess. Nycteria puffed her cheeks. Then turned towards Hades, smiled, and smugly looked at Hecate. Then Papa will make it not burn. Hades chuckled faintly, brushing her hair with a rare tenderness. Maybe, princess, maybe. The room grew quiet again. Finally, Hecate stood and lowered her head. I will continue my vigilance. The mortal world shifts rapidly. Gaia's breath is already stirring volcanoes in the east. I sense a strong giant advancing to Olympus. Hades leaned back into his throne, the weight of eternity pressing against his shoulders once more. Is that so? He said, then Olympus better be ready. The war will begin soon. And you? Hecate asked. He looked down at Nycteria, then beyond. The orb pulsed faintly in his robe. I will continue my search. Don't worry, I won't leave, he said. I promise you that. Hecate's eyes softened faintly, but she said nothing. She bowed again and disappeared in mist. And in the great throne hall of the underworld, silence returned, broken only by the quiet hum of a child's lullaby and the heartbeat of something far, far beyond godhood, waiting to be born. On this day, the day that would one day be remembered as the twilight of the skies, Olympus was ablaze with light and laughter, unaware of the storm that loomed at its gates. The grand feast of Olympus, a tradition that had once been noble and sacred, had decayed into a hollow excuse for self-indulgence. The sky palaces thrummed with drunken music, tables overflowed with ambrosia and nectar, and golden goblets clinked while laughter echoed across marble columns. Gods and goddesses, nymphs and divine spirits filled the feast hall, their figures cloaked in divine light, but their hearts cloaked in darker pleasures. The younger gods chased nymphs with slurred promises, and the elder gods boasted of past glories they no longer deserved. Apollo dueled another god in boastful song, Dionysus had long since fallen beneath a table in a puddle of his own wine, and Hermes was trading divine secrets for kisses and wagers. Amid this gathering of glittering decay, Themis stood, the titaness of divine law and unyielding justice. She who had helped the Olympians overthrow the tyranny of the Titans. Something she was starting to forget. Clad in robes of starlight and with a blindfold over her eyes, Themis stood at the edge of the hall like a shadow against the flame. She holds a goblet of wine in her hand, taking sips from time to time. Zeus, bloated with pride and wine, leaned near her, whispering honeyed nonsense in her ear, reminiscing about their old camaraderie and how they should get to know each other through friendship of thighs. But Themis said nothing. She did not slap him. Nor did she scold him. That would require acknowledgement. She simply turned her head away from him, eyes hidden beneath the blindfold, voice soft but cutting, "King of gods, do not mistake patience for affection. Not every girl will spread their legs for you." Zeus, mildly stung but far too drunk to reflect, laughed it off and turned to chase after a laughing Ori instead. Themis, silent, turned and left the hall. The gardens of Olympus were untouched by the corruption that plagued its halls. Moonflowers bloomed without witness, starlight shimmered in still pools, and silence reigned where it had long been banished. She stepped into the quiet with a sigh, breathing in the night air tinged with ambrosia and arrogance. "How far this place has fallen," she murmured, her voice thick with sorrow. Her fingers trailed along the marble balustrade as she walked slowly beneath the silver trees. Themis, who once stood against Cronus, who remained when Olympus was forged, had watched this golden mountain rise and rot. She remembered when Zeus declared that Olympus would be a place of harmony, where gods ruled not only with power but also with purpose. Now, the Underworld, she mused, had more order than Olympus. Hades, brooding and stern, still kept his realm in divine balance. Law thrived in the lands of the dead, while chaos festered on the mountain of gods. "I guess I should leave," she whispered aloud. She was not mortal. She owed these gods nothing. Her allegiance had always been to justice, not thrones. "Maybe I'll go to the Underworld," she said to herself, more firmly now. "There, I may still judge souls rather than endure the stench of ego and lust." Ever since Hades took over, although the entrance to the Underworld has become harder to cross, the realm itself has maintained law and order. There was never a complaint about how the circulation of souls became interrupted or something ever since Hades became the king. But as she spoke the words, her blindfolded eyes snapped toward the great hall behind her. A pressure, immense and terrible, was rising. The divine threads of Olympus trembled as if something vast and ancient had broken through a sacred veil. And then it came. A deafening roar, not of sound, but of force, exploded across the heavens. The very sky above Olympus cracked as if struck by a world-size hammer. Celestial flames erupted, and from the heart of the feast hall, a blast of crimson energy shot into the sky. The earth beneath her sandals shook. What happened?" Themis exclaimed, "Who is so bold as to attack Olympus? Do they think that they are Hades?" Without hesitation, Themis raised her arm, and in a flash of white fire, her sword forged in the fires of primordial balance materialized in her grip. She leapt into the air, wings of law and starlight erupting from her back as she flew toward the hall. As she soared, the divine smoke cleared. The feast had been reduced to rubble. Gods lay strewn across the floor, moaning and broken. Columns had shattered. Fires burned across the mosaics. Blood, divine and monstrous, stained the golden stones. And at the center of it all stood a colossal figure. His body was armored in bone-like plates, forged from the crushed remains of mountains and monsters. His eyes were like pits of molten earth, and his aura made the very concept of breathing a struggle. Porphyrion, the king of the giants, son of Gaia, destroyer of skies. He stood tall, with a size that seemed to cover the sky, and in his clawed hands he held something small, yet infinitely precious. A woman, her silver robes torn, her body limp but breathing. Her presence shimmered with wisdom and power even in defeat. Metis, Queen of Olympus, wife of Zeus, first mind, mother of thought. Themis froze, the weight of the moment crashing against her heart. The Titan in her screamed rage. Porphyrion turned to the gathered survivors: Apollo, bloodied but rising; Hermes, dazed and furious; and Hephaestus, crushed beneath marble. Zeus, however, was nowhere to be seen. But Themis can feel his presence, and he seems to have been buried under rubble. The giant's voice shook the very heavens. I am Porphyrion, king of the giants, son of the Earth Mother. I have come to Olympus only for one thing. He lifted Metis for all to see, smirking in satisfaction at the expression of all the gods who witnessed the scene. That is to declare war. The era of Olympians is over. We, the giants, are the new overlords of this age. Silence followed. They can only stare at the powerful figure that completely wrecked their divine place. Themis, angered by the actions of the giant, has descended. Her sword gleamed in the darkness, and her voice rang like bells of doom. Porphyrion, she said, let go of Metis, and surrender. You may be strong, but this is Olympus. You will die if you want to fight. The giant's eyes turned to her, and for the first time, his smile faltered. The earth has spoken. Olympus will fall. Justice will be reclaimed, by force. She stepped forward, blade ready, heart blazing. Then you will face my justice first. The sword of Themis rose high, gleaming like moonlight carved into steel, ready to strike divine judgment upon the monstrous form of Porphyrion. But just as her blade began its descent, the sky screamed. A sound not of thunder, but of anger. The shattered ceiling of Olympus roared as a cascade of lightning tore through it, bursting from the broken rubble of a once great column. From the rubble rose a god. His skin glowed like burning marble, and his veins surged with stormlight. His beard, wild and crackling, flowed with electric wind, and his eyes were twin storms, spinning with blinding fury. Zeus, king of Olympus, king of gods, lord of the skies. He stood among ruin, cracked and scorched, blood running down one arm, but still godly, still the king. His gaze locked on the giant. More specifically, on what the giant held. Metis. He whispered. His queen, his wife, her hair tangled in the claws of the monster. Her body limp, though still glowing faintly with divine essence. And then his voice thundered. How dare you touch my wife? The skies shattered open as Zeus raised both hands. Thunderclouds rolled in, blacker than night, and lightning coiled around him like serpents of pure wrath. From his fury, a bolt was born. Not a mere strike, but a celestial punishment, a divine spear of judgment, forged by the very soul of the storm god. Zeus hurled it, roaring, disappear from this world. The bolt tore across the sky, screaming with fury, a light too blinding for mortals, too hot for the air itself. But Porphyrion did not move. Instead, he smirked, and lifted Metis into the path of the lightning. No. Zeus's eyes widened as he cried. At the last moment, with a panicked twist of will, Zeus diverted the strike. The lightning arced violently to the side, and struck a distant mountain on the edge of the mortal world. The mountain did not explode. It simply ceased to exist, reduced to glowing ash and silence. Themis blinked, surprised. Even she had not known Zeus was capable of such raw power. It seems he had grown stronger despite indulging in depravity all these years. She began to wonder how much stronger he'd be if he actually mastered his powers. Perhaps he'd actually be a match for Hades. On second thought, she can't imagine that. Porphyrion let Metis slump against his chest, clearly satisfied with the chaos he had caused. His voice was calm, mocking, I am not here to fight you, son of Rhea. Not yet. As I have said earlier, I come only to speak. To declare war. He spread his massive arms. The war has begun. The earth has awakened. Olympus will fall. Your thrones that are built on stolen blood and lies will be destroyed. The time of giants has come. And then, the shadows at his feet twisted. A circle of dark mist, a portal, ancient and black as night, unfolded like a gaping mouth below him. Themis frowned, finding it eerily familiar. No, Metis. Zeus lunged, desperate to reach Metis, but the shadows snapped shut just as his fingertips brushed the hem of her robes. They were gone. All that remained was silence, and the distant echoes of Porphyrion's promise. A howl of rage tore from Zeus. Lightning shot from his body in all directions, striking sky, stone, and the remains of the feasting hall. Statues cracked. Pillars fell. The sky wept thunder. "Meet us!" he bellowed. And in that moment, even the gods feared their king. Suddenly, a flash of light, twin bursts of silver and crimson dropped from the skies, and the gods immediately prepared for battle. But soon, they all sighed in relief seeing two familiar figures. Ares and Athena. The two gods appeared atop the ruined stairs of Olympus. Athena, her armor scratched with the dust of battle, a mortal blade slung on her back, wisdom burning in her eyes. Ares, clad in warplate, blood on his hands, not divine blood, but mortal. His face was tense, as if ripped from a campaign. They stared at the wreckage, at the bloodied gods, at Zeus surrounded by sparks of devastation. By Olympus. Athena whispered. "What happened?" Ares frowned. "Seems like a fight occurred." At this moment. "Where were you?" A voice snapped. It was Hephaestus, emerging from rubble, leaning on his molten hammer. His usually kind eyes were red with anger. He pointed at them with his scorched hand. "Where were the two of you when Olympus was attacked?" Ares frowned at his accusing tone but did not comment. "I've been overseeing my daughters, the Amazons. I don't like to stay here, you know that. As for me, I've been in the mortal world for years now. I'm creating a quest for this mortal to complete so he become a great hero," said Athena. "Honestly, I'm not expecting that someone was dumb but powerful enough to attack Olympus." Ares sighed, thinking of fighting that being. Hephaestus glared at them but said nothing more. Then Themis stepped forward, her voice clear and cold. It was a giant who called himself Porphyrion. According to him, he is the son of Gaia. He shattered Olympus's defenses through unknown means and escaped unharmed. She looked to Zeus. He took Métis, used her as a shield, and declared war. Athena's eyes narrowed. He took Mother. Ares cracked his knuckles, a grin curling his lips. Finally. A true war. Not politics in feasts. But Themis did not share his excitement. She stepped past the wreckage, kneeling beside a fallen goddess, checking her wounds. "Too many are already hurt," she said. "And Porphyrion, for him to attack Olympus directly. He must be confident of his escape or his strength." Athena paused, then shook her head. No, if he was confident in his strength, he wouldn't have used Mother as a shield. Themis thought for a moment and nodded. "You are right. It seems he wasn't confident in taking on Zeus, so he went to grab Métis and used her as a shield." Silence fell for a moment. It seems they aren't dealing with a mere barbaric and brainless opponent but someone who actually uses their brains. At this moment, Zeus stood up straight and spoke at last, his voice lower and more dangerous. "I will raise the earth to find her. I will summon every bolt until the heavens scream. Porphyrion will suffer. I swear it upon the throne of the sky." His fists trembled, sparks dancing around them. Athena stepped forward. "Calm down, father." Zeus looked at her, pain and rage warring in his soul. "We have no intel about our enemies. Finding them is more difficult than finding a needle in a haystack. We must first gather our forces and plan our next move." Zeus stared at her for a moment before he reluctantly nodded once. "Then summon them all," he commanded. "Every Olympian, every god, every ally. Call the Hecatonchires. Speak to the fates. Even the underworld must be warned." He turned toward the broken hall. "Let the heavens be cleansed. Let Olympus rise again in war." And above them all, the sky darkened. The world was changing. The war of gods and giants had begun. Mortal world, state of Herion. The wind howled gently atop Helios mountain, carrying with it the breath of ancient time. Wisps of cloud clung to its jagged cliffs like ghostly fingers, forever swirling around its peak. Each step up the sacred stairs felt like a journey between the world of men and the cradle of gods. Lord Callion of Herion, descendant of and named after General Kyrian, now in his twilight years, ascended the final flight. His hands, weathered by the weight of both sword and scepter, grasped the smooth marble rail. His white cloak, trimmed with gold thread, billowed in the mountain winds like a banner of the old world. Behind him, no guards followed. After all, although the Temple of Harion was not off limits and can be visited by anyone, what lies ahead is something not just anyone is qualified to traverse. Beyond where the temple was located is said to be where the Tomb of Helios is located and is guarded by elite warriors. This final stretch, the Path of Silence, was one only the city lord of Harion was permitted to walk. The city lay far below now, hidden beneath a sea of clouds. Above, the Gate of Helios stood waiting, an enormous pair of golden doors embedded into the very mountain itself. Runes glowed faintly on its surface, and mist curled around it like veils on a sleeping giant. Beyond this gate is a tomb. But not just an ordinary tomb. This was the sanctum of the First Flame, where the founder, the savior, the legend of humanity, Helios, the king where all began, was entombed. Callion reached the gate and placed both palms upon its surface. "Open," he whispered. A sound like a breath exhaled from the mountain itself echoed through the air. The runes pulsed once, then the gates creaked open, not outward, but inward, revealing a world of cloudlight and shadowed marble. No matter how many times he has seen this scene, Callion couldn't stop himself from feeling awestruck at the beauty of this place. He stepped inside. The mist thickened immediately, curling like spirits around his feet. The pathway into the sanctum was long and lined with statues, depictions of Helios in every stage of his life. A youth, a warrior, a leader, a king. And then at the very end, Helios seated upon a stone throne, eyes closed, hands resting upon his knees, his form carved of obsidian, veins of gold running through the stone like frozen lightning. But Callion did not get far. Suddenly, the fog stirred unnaturally. A sharp, metallic tremor resonated through the air. Clang, clang, clang. From every shadow, they emerged. 100 figures, clad in obsidian black armor, stepped silently from the mist. Each bore no symbol, no banner, and no exposed flesh. Their visors were featureless helms of night glass, smooth and polished like river stones. And from within their armor pulsed a soft, dull red glow, as if embers lived inside their chests. Their formation was perfect. A circle, wide and unbroken, surrounding Callion in the middle of the temple court. The Sentinels. An order so secretive that most dismissed them as legend. An elite brotherhood created the descendants of the soldiers who accompanied Heriod, tasked with guarding his tomb, his legacy, and the world against ancient threats that mortals were never meant to know. They moved like ghosts. Soundless. Deadly. Eternal. Greetings, Sentinels, I am Callion of Harion. And then, one stepped forward. His armor was darker than night, trimmed with scarlet, and a long, curved greatsword rested across his back. His helmet had no eye holes, yet a deep red line ran across it like a silent glare. When he spoke, it was with a voice layered in both mun and echo, as if multiple beings spoke through him. Lord Callion. It's been 30 years since you last visited. You look old. Callion did not flinch nor offer a response. He bowed deeply, a gesture of honor, not submission. Commander Varn. I have come not as a lord, but as a messenger. I bring a prophecy, one spoken by the oracle of Lady Hecate. And I fear that I may have to disturb you and the rest of the sentinels to aid us soon. A pause. The mist swirled. Tell me the details. Varn said. Callion stepped forward, eyes steady despite the encirclement of 100 silent warriors. According to Lady Hecate, war is rising, not between men, but between the divines who resided in the skies. Already Olympus trembles, the heavens are cracking, and the earth is breaking. If the war really starts, the ones who will suffer first will be us, the mortals. He looked around, locking eyes with the faceless helms. You must know, we have always been hated by the gods, but they simply tolerated us for the sake of our faith. If they can get rid of us through this war, then... A chill swept through the temple. The red glow in the sentinel's armor seemed to pulse faster. Varn did not move. But his voice changed, more solemn, more alert. Harion will not fall. Not even gods can make us kneel. We didn't bow down centuries ago, and we won't bow down even now. Callion nodded. The mortal world will become a battlefield. As the birthplace of heroes, I am sure that we will be targeted first. Our state is a threat to any would-be conquerors. Varn slowly raised a hand. Immediately, the sentinels dispersed, stepping away from Kalyan, but not out of sight. They stood at the edges now, watching like shadows behind pillars. Then Varn unsheathed his sword with a sound like metal breathing. The blade shimmered, not steel, but something older. Black metal with red veins that moved like lava beneath the surface. Then we must awaken the old defense. Kalyan stiffened. You mean the? Varn nodded. The Eclipse Protocol. The last order of General Kyrian, given in whispers before he died. If ever a threat from the heavens or below threatens mankind again, we do not wait. We do not pray. We act. He turned to the statue at the end of the tomb. Behind it, hidden by illusion, was a second set of stairs, spiraling deep into the mountain. Come with me, Lord Kalyan. If this war truly will consume the world, then we must ensure we will be able to protect it. Kalyan nodded, following after Varn. And as they walked into the depths of the tomb, mist curling behind them, the sentinels followed in perfect silence. Above them, in the skies beyond the mountain, thunder cracked once more. War was coming. And in Hirio's resting place, the weapons of old began to stir. Deep beneath the earth, where even sunlight dared not trespass, within a hollowed cavern whose walls trembled with dormant fury, the king of the giants stood. The cavern was enormous, miles wide and taller than the highest mountain peak, and yet the air inside felt tight, oppressive, weighed down by 1,000 thundering heartbeats and the rage of giants. Porphyrion, the dread king of the reborn giants, stood at the highest ledge overlooking his kin. His skin was like storm-dark granite, runes glowing faintly across his body, pulsing with a chaotic rhythm. His hair fell in black cords down his shoulders, and in his eyes lived only war. Below him, over 100 giants had gathered, towering monstrosities with armor of bone, stone, and volcanic iron. Some bore horns like minotaurs, others bore wings folded against their backs, or arms like tree trunks. Their presence cracked the very cavern with each motion. This was not an army. This was a force of nature. But behind Porphyrion, in cruel contrast, a woman knelt in chains. Métis, the Titaness of wisdom and queen of Olympus, was bound in celestial metal that shimmered like moonlight dipped in oil. Her hair, glistening as starlight, clung to her face. Her breath was shallow, but her eyes burned with defiance. No cries escaped her lips. No pleas. Only silence, piercing and proud. Porphyrion raised a hand, and the low murmuring among the giants ceased instantly. He was about to speak but was interrupted as one voice rang out. A massive brute named Thamios, twice the height of the others and covered in armor fused from molten obsidian, stepped forward with fury in his every stride. Why did we not crush Olympus when we had the chance? He bellowed, his voice shaking stalactites from the ceiling. You held their queen in your hands. Zeus crawled from rubble like a worm. Their halls lay broken. Why retreat? Why plan like cowards when we could have feasted on their bones? The other giants stirred, some nodding, others pounding fists on chests in agreement. Porphyrion turned his head slowly, his expression unreadable. Then he stepped forward. The ground cracked beneath his steps. Because, Thamios, Porphyrion said, his voice deep and deliberate, Olympus is not as simple as it seems, it is a sleeping beast. Wound it foolishly, and it rouses. Cut too shallow, and it strikes back stronger. He looked down on the horde of giants, his gaze sweeping over them like a storm cloud passing over a city. Those Olympians? They are not without strength. No matter how they indulged in depravity, they still ruled the cosmos. They also have allies. Spirits. Gods of the earth, sea, and sky. If I had stayed, I would have faced not just Zeus, but also Poseidon, Athena, Ares, Artemis, and even Themis as well. Perhaps even the primordial ones. I dared to go there because I know most of them are away. A murmur of unease passed through the ranks. Porphyrion raised his hand again. So you must remember, one does not strike a beast's head when it still has claws. We must cut those off first. He gestured behind him, toward Métis. With her in chains, Zeus is crippled. Not because of power, but because of heart. He is a fool, but a fool in love. He will not think clearly. He will not lead wisely. He turned back to them, eyes narrowing. And now we must target Athena. Gasps rose from some of the giants. Even among them, The wisdom and ruthlessness of Athena were feared. Porphyrion continued. She is her mother's mind incarnate. Clever, patient, and dangerously quick to adapt. She will seek to uncover our weaknesses, and if she does, she will move gods, mortals, and spirits to resist us. She must die before her mind awakens to our game. Another voice called out, this one mocking and laughing. A leaner giant with skin like black marble and eyes glowing red, Zamacross. Why do we scheme and plot like mortals? We are giants. War is our tongue. Destruction is our prayer. Let them come. We'll drown them in blood and ash. Porphyrion turned sharply, and for the first time, his voice thundered. Because I want them to suffer. Silence fell. The sound of dripping water echoed eerily in the cavern. Porphyrion took a slow step forward, and then another. Every movement exuded a quiet, terrible fury. I want them to feel fear before death. To hear the cries of their cities before their own bones are broken. I want them to despair, slowly, painfully, until their minds rot. I want them to experience what Mother has experienced as they slowly destroy her land. He stopped before Zamacross, staring down at him. I do not simply destroy Olympus. I want them to experience pain and torment as they slowly die. Watch as their numbers dwindle to a handful. And fall into despair and hopelessness as they realize they cannot win. His voice dropped to a growl. We sow dissent. We awaken ancient enemies. We tear down their allies in the mortal world. We silence the voices of Hope, Athena, Hermes, and Apollo. And only then do we burn the last ruins of their pantheon with our bare hands. That kind of thing is the best form of revenge for our mother, right? A ripple of darkness pulsed from his body, and the very walls of the cave shook as if in agreement. Métis stirred in her chains for the first time, her head lifting just enough to speak. You giants are really cruel. You think destroying Olympus would make you the ruler of the cosmos? Laughable. You will never be gods. Porphyrion looked over his shoulder at her, not unkindly, but like one would to a relic of the past. No. We are not gods. And we don't dream of being one. He turned back to his army. We are giants, the end of gods. The giants roared in approval, their voices shaking the earth. Porphyrion raised a hand and traced a symbol in the air, one that glowed crimson. A floating map of Olympus and its surrounding domains appeared, projected in flamelight against the stone. Begin the hunt. Athena moves through mortal lands. She is our first blade to break. Then we strike the next. And the next. Until the skies are silent. And so, in the shadows of the world, war brewed not just with weapons but with vengeance and ancient hate. Far away from Olympus, across wind-scoured cliffs and wastelands soaked in silence, there existed a land the gods no longer tread, a canyon carved by wrath and fire, where thunder never ceased rumbling deep below the crust of the world. It was here, bound upon the jagged rock of a mountain, that Prometheus remained chained. Years passed. Centuries, even. And still he endured. Each morning, the eagle came, its wings blotting out the sun as it descended with shrill cries to tear at his divine flesh. Each evening, the Titan regenerated, pain-wreathed and defiant. His chains were divine and old, forged by Hephaestus himself at Zeus's order, so ancient now they shimmered with time-forged rust and power. But on this day, before the eagle could arrive, two goddesses approached. The winds parted. The skies grew momentarily clear. From the horizon walked Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, her eyes sharp with thought and her steps brimming with purpose. She wore no armor, only her usual flowing robes and a silvery cloak that flickered with starlight, an illusion that hid the polished bronze plate beneath. At her side was Themis, the embodiment of divine law, walking tall and serene, her presence balanced and unshaken despite the rising dread in the world. They walked in silence for some time, until Athena broke it. I didn't expect you to be thinking the same as me, Themis, she said, glancing at the barren rocks. The others only think of revenge. They haven't even thought of asking for advice. How dumb they are. Themis offered her a faint smile. I'm not like those brutes. I know how to prepare for war, and right now we need any knowledge from the Titan of forethought. Athena nodded. Yes, when it comes to prophecies, only the fates can claim to be better than him. But those three only serve Lord Hades, so yeah, we can't really ask them for help. True. There's a certain irony in Prometheus. He knows how to shape what seems hopeless. He did it with men. Perhaps he can do it with gods. Athena huffed softly. Speaking of men, she said, her expression warming slightly, I guided one recently. A mortal. Just a child when I found him, barely knew how to hold a spear. But now? He slew a chimeric beast with only a shattered sword and his wit. Themis gave a nostalgic chuckle. You always had a soft spot for mortals. Athena waved her finger at her. Not mortals, heroes. And you can blame Helios for that, auntie. He ruined me. He was the one who made me obsessed with heroes. Themis chuckled. Seems like you're quite fond of him. Absolutely. Athena smiled softly. If he didn't die, I would have made him my husband. Even now, I'm still searching for his reincarnation in the mortal world. Themis blinked, surprised. She didn't think that Athena would be this obsessed over a mortal man. Besides, triumphing over impossible odds, shining brighter than any star, carving your name in history, those kinds of people are really just the best, aren't they? Athena exclaimed, eyes brightening like stars. The elder goddess gave a slow nod, her golden eyes reflecting the clouded sky. How about you, Aunt? Athena turned towards her. Have you had any stories to tell? I read from a book that you cited with father in the Titanomachy. Themis hummed. Once, long ago, before Olympus was even thought of, she murmured, Prometheus, Epimetheus, and I fought beside each other. Against Atlas. You would have liked it. He thought he could win by crushing everything. We proved him wrong. Athena raised an eyebrow. Wow, so you fought on the front line? Not often, Themis replied, but when I do, it is to bring order, not ruin. The conversation died as they arrived. Before them, across the broken cliffs of the mountain, the chained titan lay, Prometheus, bound to stone by shackles older than any city. His body was ragged and covered in old scars, his form lean and worn, but his eyes sparkled with undimmed mirth. He looked up as they approached and gave a crooked grin. Ladies, he said, voice echoing against the canyon walls. Don't tell me Olympus has finally agreed to let me down. I knew this century was lucky. Themis smiled faintly. We're not here to free you, old friend. Pity, he said with mock sadness. I even prepared a freedom speech. Athena stepped forward, arms folded, eyeing him closely. You're still joking, even now? Prometheus laughed, his chains rattling with the movement. If I didn't joke, I'd go mad. Well, madder. Besides, your faces were so serious. I heard an explosion coming from Olympus. Was there a gas leak? Neither goddess responded. Prometheus pouted theatrically. No laughs? Really? Oh wait, do you two know what a gas leak is? No? Wow. Uncultured. Come on, slime. They didn't. You two are no fun. I used to be considered charming, you know. Themis stepped closer, voice firm now. We came for knowledge, Prometheus. The giants have attacked. War is coming, and we need your insight. Prometheus tilted his head, his playful tone quieting, though the smile didn't fully leave. Giants, huh? Took them long enough. Athena's eyes narrowed. You knew? Darling, of course I did. I hear the birds. I hear the earth groan in its sleep. And I saw your stars start shaking weeks ago. Then speak, Themis urged. What must Olympus do? Prometheus sighed, a long breath that carried the weariness of centuries. I don't think those guys will like it, he said. We're past the point of liking anything, said Athena. He looked up at them, the wind tugging at his hair, his chains creaking like old bones. Heroes. That's what you need. Not armies. Not prophecies. But mortal heroes. Especially demigods. They are the key. Athena exchanged a glance with Themis, confusion and concern flickering in both their eyes. How? Themis asked, voice sharper. Prometheus grinned, but now it was that old, sly grin, the one that had unsettled Zeus long ago. Now, he said teasingly. I've given you a torch. Do you want the whole bonfire, too? He stretched his arms, as if yawning despite his imprisonment. I think my visit hours are over. Athena stepped forward, fists clenched. Prometheus, but Themis touched her shoulder. Leave it, she said quietly. He's said enough. They turned to go. Oh, come now. Prometheus called after them, pouting like a child denied a sweet. You're not even going to say goodbye? No farewell? No, we'll bring you nectar next time. Silence. They didn't turn back. Prometheus exhaled and leaned his head against the cold stone, staring at the vast gray sky. Umph, he murmured. Gods. No sense of humor. Far above, the eagle shrieked. While the Olympians worry about the coming gigantomachy, one primordial was worrying about the fate of the cosmos itself. Deep within a forgotten forest, night had fallen. Not simply over the mortal realm, but across the tapestry of the world's soul. A silence, ancient and heavy, rolled like mist over mountains, through valleys, and across cities where gods no longer walked and mortals prayed more out of habit than faith. And in this silence, Nyx moved. She did not fly or walk, for those were crude motions. She unfolded, slipping through the layered veils of reality like ink through water. It has been centuries since she last felt it, and she had never rested searching for it, but she had not found a clue. That entity that slipped through the cracks of the universe that was formed due to the battle between Hades and Uranus during the Titanomachy. For centuries, she had sensed nothing but whispers. Murmurs in forgotten tombs, chill winds where none should be. But years ago, she felt something. A man. A mortal. He was nothing, at first glance. Thin, young, and cloaked in threadbare robes, his home a crumbling stone tower at the edge of a dying village. But his mind, Nyx could feel that this mortal comprehends knowledge beyond the current era. He had not just abandoned belief in the gods. That was not uncommon. Many mortals did in this age. No, this man had begun to write new laws, not of divinity, but of mechanics, of logic, of the very nature of the world. His thoughts moved like rivers unseen, carving through future centuries. With chalk and ink and charcoal, he sketched machines that had not yet been dreamed, gears that turned without fire, harnessed lightning in wires, and used pressure to store and unleash force. He wrote formulas that described the curvature of light and matter. He measured time with precision only the gods possessed. He called the stars by names no mortal had ever spoken. He whispered of gravitational constants and wave duality as if they were common terms. And more troubling than anything, he predicted things, truths buried so deeply in the nature of this world that only beings like Prometheus or Nyx herself had ever come close to understanding them. He should not exist. Yet he did. And if he had been allowed to live, his inventions would have dragged humanity out of superstition and starlight and into a world of steel and thought. His very presence tilted the path of history. The world, the universe, should have responded with awe. But instead, it rejected him. He was called mad. Not by the fools or the fearful, but by priests, scholars, and kings. As though something whispered behind their ears, twisting admiration into revulsion. They chained him in a town square, tore his papers to ash, and silenced his mind with fire. As his body burned, he laughed, not from madness, but defiance. And when he died, Nyx, hidden in shadow above, saw the way the sky shimmered, as if sighing in relief. She narrowed her eyes. That man shouldn't exist. She descended then, not to intervene, too late for that, but to touch the ashes of his work. They should have been mundane, and yet, what she saw was beyond that. Because there, amid the cinders, were sigils. Incomprehensible, old, ancient, and wrong sigils that seemed to have not come from this world. A pattern older than this universe, a taste of something alien. Nyx stood silently as the wind blew the ashes away, her hair cascading behind her like a sea of midnight. Then, she moved. Faster than time, her consciousness expanded, casting her awareness over the world. And she began to see it. Incidents. Moments. Anomalies. In the deserts of the south, a child born blind began carving star charts that predicted comets that wouldn't appear for 1,000 years. In a snow-choked valley, an old woman dreamt of numbers and awoke to build a machine of copper and ice that spun endlessly on its own. In a jungle swallowed by vines, a tribe constructed aqueducts and generators with no source of knowledge or outside influence. Each time, progress bloomed too fast. Each time, progress was snuffed out just as quickly. Floods, fires, invasions, executions, murders, coincidence upon coincidence. Something, she whispered, standing atop a mountain of shadows, wants them to advance. But not out of kindness. Not like Prometheus, who gifted fire in defiance of fate. No, this was acceleration. Like rushing a fruit to ripen faster than it should be. This is a trap. Something, or someone, was fattening the mortal world for slaughter. And she knew exactly who the culprit was. She clenched her jaw and raised her hand. The shadows churned. Erebus, she called out. From behind her, space seemed to crack as her child, her brother, and her mirror rose from the folds of night. Erebus was the breath of shadow, the ink between thoughts. Where Nyx was the queen of quiet, Erebus was the void behind sound. You summoned me, sister, he said, his voice a tremor beneath the world. I need you to watch the mortals. Closely. Something is stirring. Knowledge not accessible for this era has been planted into the minds of mortals, as if trying to use those knowledge to accelerate humanity's advancements. Erebus tilted his head, his hollow gaze seeing what few could bear to witness. I see. You want me to observe because you believe it has begun to act. I do. Erebus nodded, giving no argument. Very well, I shall observe the mortal world as you have instructed, sister. He stepped backward and vanished, his presence folding into a shadow that slipped beneath time, beneath cities, beneath every stone cast and story told. Nyx remained alone atop her mountain of dusk. Her thoughts turned grim. So, you finally decided to make a move. The stars above seemed to twitch, subtly wrong in their rhythm. And Nyx, who had walked through the womb of the universe before chaos herself sang, whispered to no one but the dark. Since you have shown your tail, you better be ready for it to be grabbed. I will eliminate your kind that dared to invade my territory. The scratching of the quill against parchment had long become a rhythm in the underworld, a quiet, relentless sound in the dim golden chamber beneath the hanging fortress of Pluto. Hades, king of the dead, lord of the spirits, sat in silence, his dark robes flowing around him like living shadows. In his hand, a bronze-feathered quill moved across a scroll documenting soul intake statistics, border disputes in the intersections, and temple offerings from the surface world. He paused, eyes drifting upward, not toward anything specific, but into a corner of the ceiling where no one ever stood. His thoughts wandered. I wonder if she's still playing. Those two better return her before dinner. That she that he's talking about is his daughter. The little one who had sprung into his world like a star in the night, radiant and curious. She was supposed to be with Hera and Aphrodite today, playing in the blooming gardens of the Underworld's core section, where divine spirits had shaped a miniature paradise. He smiled faintly. Hera would teach her posture. Aphrodite would likely spoil her with honeyed fruit and flowing silks. Hades can already imagine Hera being the strict but kind aunt and Aphrodite being the indulgent and playful aunt. His smile, however, was brief. A sound interrupted the stillness, a ripple in the veil. Before he could glance up, a voice pierced the silence. Lord Hades. He didn't flinch. He never did. His eyes on his work, doing his job. Hecate, he said, setting the quill aside, you enter unannounced. How unlike you. You aren't one to act so disrespectful to me. Apologies, but I came with unrest, she replied. Her form emerged from the flickering shadow near the corner of the hall, tall, pale, her cloak dark as the night, her lamp flickering. Her eyes, serene yet sharp, bore a strange urgency today. Hades gestured toward a chair carved from obsidian. Sit, then. Share your unrest. She did not. Instead, she stepped forward, putting her hands on Hades' desk. We have received souls lately. Quite a number of them. That's every day, he replied. Mortals die, Hecate. It is the one constant. These are not like others, she continued. Some were executed as heretics. Others died as outcasts. But all of them, every single one, possessed knowledge that should not exist. He arched a brow. You'll need to be more specific. Knowledge of what? War. Magic. No, she said softly. They talk about weird things to complicate numbers by adding alphabets. They even spoke of things called atoms and of stars that were not gods but balls of burning gas. Some died trying to build things, something called engines, turbines, and machines. They even tried to teach others, but most were killed for it. Hades leaned back slightly. Then they were simply visionaries or delusional, take your pick. No, she said, voice now tinged with something rare in Hecate, uncertainty. It's wrong. It feels wrong. Not divine inspiration. Not Prometheus flame. Something else. The shadows in the chamber grew longer. Hades studied her carefully, then sighed. Take me to them, he said, standing slowly. If your instincts are stirred, then it is worth a look. They descended into the deeper vaults of the underworld, through spiraling black stairs and gates carved from the bones of dead stars. Eventually, they emerged on the banks of the river Lethe, where memory came to drown. The waters shimmered silver blue beneath a starless sky. Mist curled upward from the currents like whispering spirits. Lethe, the goddess of forgetfulness, stood knee-deep in her waters, brushing her fingers along the surface. When she saw them, she smiled faintly. My king, she said, bowing slightly. Hecate says you've been busy, Hades murmured. Lethe nodded, her expression unreadable. These souls, they do not wish to forget. Even after the touch of my river, some fragments remain, as if their memories do not belong to this world, and thus, cannot be erased. Hades frowned. Show me. Lethe raised her hand, and the river shifted. Dozens of floating memory fragments emerged from the waters, small orbs of light, each flickering with visions, equations, sounds, and diagrams. They began to pass before Hades, one by one. A man drawing a parabola, speaking of gravity not as a divine force, but as a curvature of space-time. A woman designing a turbine powered by water pressure, speaking of energy conservation. A child naming elements by number and weight, long before alchemy had even become a whisper in the minds of men. Hades stared at them in a daze, as if his mind was trying to process a forgotten memory. And then, a chalkboard. An old, gray classroom. An argument with a professor. A textbook filled with dense formulas. A memory of being late for exams. A memory of wearing fabric that didn't exist in this world. A memory of walking under electric lights. Hades stepped back, eyes widening, not in fear, but in recognition. The symbols. The words. They were not foreign to him. They were not mystical or divine. He had once written them. Long, long ago. This is calculus, he muttered. Trigonometry. Electromagnetism. The Standard Model. Quarks. Bosons. His voice grew quiet. At this moment, he remembered. A lecture hall. A cool afternoon. Books clutched in his hands. A city of glass and steel. Skyscrapers. Airplanes. Earth. Before he became Hades, he had been a mun. Not a god. A student. A mortal. He had died, he remembered, or did he? He didn't know how he ended up here or how he became Hades. He was sure that he was on. No. He couldn't remember. It was foggy. Faint. Buried beneath layers of divine power and rebirth. But the memories now stirred like hornets. He had known this world. The modern world. And so had these souls. Hecate was watching him closely now, her expression worried. My lord, is something the matter? Are you unwell? Hades snapped out of his thoughts and stared at Hecate, shaking his head slowly. Yeah, I'm fine. Lethe, her voice gentle, asked, should I stop? It seems like looking at these memories made you uncomfortable, my king. Hades turned to face the river, the flickering memories still hanging in the air. No need. I was just surprised. It seems like these souls aren't supposed to exist. Or rather, they aren't supposed to be born yet. Hecate's eyes narrowed. Are you saying they are souls that should have been born in the future? Maybe. Hades replied, his voice like thunder now. But they could also be souls from another world entirely. Perhaps another universe, brought here by someone or something. He looked to the sky, though there was none, and felt something watching. Not from above, but from outside. Something that shouldn't be here, he whispered. HADES stepped closer. Then, what should we do? Should we erase any of the traces of these anomalies? HADES thought for a moment but soon shook his head. No need. These people died because someone was already doing that. We don't need to interfere right now. He turned towards Lethe. That is enough. Lethe nodded as the river quieted. The memories dissolved back into the mist. HADES gazed at the sky. It seems like something bigger than the Gigantomachy is brewing. I must prepare. Before the birth of shape or song, before time had rhythm and gods had names, there were creatures that ventured outside of reality. They had no name, for names were a thing of inside worlds, realms where meaning coagulated into sound and where beings thought language could grant them power over things older than logic. And it is one of them. It came from a place that could not be spoken of, only fled from. A place beyond the veil of cosmos, where reality had no anchor, and thought dissolved into shrieks. It was a tiny, feeble parasite surviving due to the mere indifference of an incomprehensible creature. But one day, it was shaken off and drifted into countless universes. It continued to drift, going from one reality to another. But soon, it became afraid because it had not found any universe for what seemed to be an eternity. But then one day, as it drifted through the void, it saw a crack. A fracture in the seal of one of the infinite universes. It was not large, no more than a sliver, a moment of weakness, an exposed throat in the fabric of spacetime, but for something like the entity, it was enough. The crack had been carved during an ancient battle known as Titanomachy, where HADES, the quiet and formidable son of Kronos, had clashed with Uranus, the Skyfather, on a plane near the very edge of creation. Their divine might echoed into the seams of the universe like hammer blows upon glass. And through this scar, a ripple had opened, a wound in the breath of the cosmos. A door, just wide enough for something to slip through unnoticed. So it came. A whisper, a flicker, a wrongness in the corner of the universe's eye. No one saw it arrive. Even Nyx, who dwelled deeper than the roots of existence, barely felt its presence. The gods were too preoccupied with war and blood and thrones, and even if they aren't, they are far too weak to send it. And so the universe moved on, unaware that something entered and observed. And observe it did. The entity did not act. Not yet. It was not foolish. It did not know this place, and its instincts, shaped over the deaths of 10,000 universes, warned caution. It began to observe. Centuries passed. And as it drifted in places no mind could map, it began to judge the threads of this reality. It found many beings, some arrogant, some proud, and many loud with their light and fury. But of all the gods and ancients who bloomed from this reality, it marked 5 whose very essence repelled it. They are threats. Not in strength alone, but in influence, in insight, and in instinct. HADES, the silent one, whose domain stitched together the metaphysical laws of death. A terrifying opponent for the entity and considered the number 1 threat. Nyx, the primordial night, who was born from chaos itself and descended into this lower plane of existence. Erebus, twin of Nyx, a veil and a silence even the entity found hard to pass through. Kronos, the devourer of ages, who once had teeth sharp enough to bite time itself. Gaia, the world mother, who bore the shape of this universe, whose presence was too deeply embedded in its flesh. These 5 were problems. This realm had many gods, yes, but these were the ones who made it inhospitable to a creature like it. So it hid. It coiled into the cracks, the voids, the in-between spaces, where even Nyx's senses thinned and Erebus' darkness could not reach it. There, in the hollows between gravity and thought, it waited. But it did not wait passively. The entity was a predator. A consumer. A farmer of cosmos. It had fed before. When universes matured, when their civilizations became bright and seething with energy and collective thought, it would harvest them. Civilizations made energy, and energy was life. The more complex the mind of a species, the more flavor it produced when consumed. It was not physical flesh it devoured, but essence, the culmination of philosophy, sorrow, invention, hubris, and ambition. In every skyscraper were 1,000 flavors. In every monument, a century's worth of hope. A highly civilized universe is the best source of food. But this universe? It was young. Despite its age, its timeline seemed strangely sluggish, like an organism stunted in its growth. The mortal species here, humans, primarily, had only begun to crawl from mud into myth. Their minds were still chained to gods and superstition. They had fire now, yes, and soon would have more. But they were not ripe. They were not ready. And that disturbed the entity. Why? Why was time so twisted here? Why did civilizations not rise and fall in great blazing arcs as in other realities? It studied more, peered into the folds of time. And what it saw disturbed even it. This universe was being interfered with. Not from outside, like itself, but from within. Something, or perhaps someone, was slowing time's rhythm. Whether consciously or not, a force within this realm resisted advancement, shielding the mortals from ripening too soon. As if the universe had grown wise to predators like it, and was trying to delay the feast. But time, even when slowed, must flow. And so it waited. Patient. Impossibly patient. Because one day, Nyx would surely stop hunting it. She was tireless now, yes, forever gliding through shadow realms and dreams, chasing flickers of foreign essence. But nothing could hunt forever. Even primordials must eventually retreat into sleep. And when she did, when Erebus blinked away, then it would move. Then it would begin to prod. To tempt. It had already planted seeds. Small ones. Whispers in the ears of gods. Whispers in the hearts of kings. It was subtle. A knowledge here. An inspiration there. A war that didn't quite make sense. Monsters that killed not for blood, but to savor thought. Just to test the waters. And just like it expected, every seed it planted was crushed before it could bloom. Making sure that something was preventing this world from advancing too fast. But no matter, it can wait. And when the mortals finally reached the point where their minds could dream cities of steel and sorrow, where their towers pierced clouds and their science rewrote fate, when their gods no longer walked beside them, then the feast would begin. Until then, it watches. It listens. It waits. The clouds curled and split as Athena cleaved through the sky like a silver spear hurled by fate itself. Wind coiled around her bronze-plated form, her cloak of owl feathers flaring like wings behind her. Lightning surged far below, thunder groaning like a weary beast beneath her feet. But she paid none of it any mind. She was angry. Not the kind of fury that scorches the earth, like Ares. Not the cruel, coiling rage of Zeus. This was the cold, cutting kind. A diamond-edged wrath that brewed in silence until it bled into every breath. Fool, she muttered. Foolish old tyrant. Her fists clenched at her sides, gauntlets groaning from the pressure. Her eyes glared ahead, but she didn't see the mountains or forests. She saw him, her father, sitting on that blasted throne of white marble and lightning, his hand resting on his chin in that lazy, arrogant posture. Zeus. Once the beacon of Olympus. Now, a hollow echo of himself. The hero who ended the tyranny of the Titans and became a tyrant himself. He had laughed when Athena said what Prometheus propped his eyes, that only mortals could turn the tide of this war. His pride and arrogance refused to accept such words. How could someone that is no different from an ant possibly help someone as great as them? Humans, he'd scoffed then. The dirtborn, the weak-willed, the ever-bleeding insects of the earth? He had laughed, and the others followed. Like they always did. Instead of heeding Prometheus' prophecy, Zeus instead ordered all Olympians to gather for a counterattack, as if this was a war they could win with strength alone. As if those giants hidden in the shadows, whose numbers and powers remained completely unknown, could be bested by a swing of Poseidon's trident or a thunderbolt hurled across the sky. Don't they know that they literally have no idea about how strong the giants are? Where are they hiding? How many are they? Why would they counterattack when they knew nothing? Athena clenched her jaw. Her helm nearly cracked from the pressure. They had no idea what they were dealing with. Not even her mind could come up with a plan to counter an enemy they had no knowledge of. She looked to the horizon. Artemis would surely not listen to Zeus and not attend this gathering. The moon huntress had likely retreated with her sisterhood into the sacred groves, watching the stars for omens. She had no time for Olympian bluster, not when her girls, her loyal huntresses, could be in danger. Astrea wouldn't answer the call either. She never did. The starborn enforcer of justice roamed alone, guided only by her silver scales. She'd likely scorn Zeus's plan, choosing instead to impose her own righteous judgment on whatever forces threatened balance. Even Ares, the bloodthirsty storm of war, had grown reluctant. Athena's brow furrowed at the thought of him. Her brutish, reckless, often unbearable half-brother had changed. And she was sure that Helios had changed him. There had been a time when Ares would have leapt at this war, driven by the scent of blood and fire. But now? Despite all his talks of excitement at finally going to war, he didn't make any move and simply left Olympus. Why? Well, he has children. Daughters he adored, sons he trained with patience she never thought he possessed. In the past, Athena would have never thought that Ares could possess such paternal instincts like he does now. His love for his children was so strong that there was a time when he personally slaughtered one of Poseidon's own spawn for laying hands on his daughter, completely disregarding any consequences. He had even dared to come knocking on Poseidon's door and look for a fight. That was the day Athena realized Ares had learned what it meant to protect, not just conquer. Helios changed you, she'd once told him. He hadn't denied it. The way that King of Men stood against all impossible odds, his back facing the kingdom he had built and protected. It was a glorious moment that stuck to the god of war. Athena paused mid-flight, hovering like a hawk above the low-hanging storm clouds. Wind howled around her, but she was unmoved. Below, the mortal world stretched out like an ancient tapestry, valleys carved by time, forests humming with life, and cities of stone and fire nestled in cradle-like hills. It was so small, so fragile, and yet... How? She whispered aloud. How can they, mortal men and women, hope to kill something that stands beside gods? She raised countless heroes, hailed as their patron even, but deep in her heart, she knew that none of them could even hope to touch the realm of gods. No one can, unless they are blessed by the gods themselves. Her lips tightened as she paused her thoughts. Her mind drifted to Helios, the mortal who united the scattered human tribes, who faced monsters born from divine wrath and stood unflinching, who carved cities where once there was wilderness, forged the first law, and sang the first anthem of mankind's sovereignty, who spoke not with prophecy, but human will. A man who had looked into the abyss and built a bridge across it. A man who boasted human power in an era of God-believers. Could they all be as great as him? Her heartbeat slowed. Impossible. What am I thinking? No gods or humans can be as great as him. No one can compare to him, she murmured. His hands built what gods deemed impossible. Who can even match a man like him? The words echoed in the wind, swept away before the world could hear. Athena's chest tightened, not with grief, but with the raw weight of truth and longing. Helios had done more with mortal hands than most gods had with divinity. He had believed in the power of humanity. And so do Prometheus and Hades. Athena stared at the mortals below. Why would she doubt them? Athena took a breath, held it, and exhaled slowly. There would be no victory through divine firepower. No glory in celestial arrogance. If anything was to be won, it would be through those below, those fragile souls who dared resist even fate itself. But would they rise in time? Athena didn't know. But she would find out. She turned in the sky, her wings of thought and light folding around her. The assembly on Olympus could wait. Let her father shout into the wind. Let his lightning fall like rain. She had something more important to do. She would find the mortals who still dared to think, to learn, and to create. And she would protect them. For in them, Helios lived again. And in them, perhaps, the last hope of gods as well. Athena hovered above the town, cloaked in mist and moonlight. Her eyes gleamed beneath her crested helm as she watched the streets below, where torchlight flickered in the hands of mortals going about their nightly routines. The roofs were made of thatch and clay, the walls of mud brick and limestone, and yet, even in the simplicity, there was something stirring. A presence. A ripple in the air. A pulse of fate. There, walking down the main road like a lion among lambs, strode a man unlike any other in this era. Towering. Muscled like a statue come to life. He wore a lion's pelt across his shoulders, its fangs resting just above his brow. In his hand was a sword, longer than a man's body, bound in a sheath of bronze and blood-stained leather. Children whispered his name as he passed. Women peeked from windows. Men made way. This man is Alcides, son of Zeus and a mortal queen. A demigod. A hero who had faced the 12 impossible labors, and lived. He had wrestled the Nemean lion, slain the nine-headed Hydra, captured Chimera with his bare hands, and done more with his mortal hands than most gods with a pantheon behind them. His name was already legend. His deeds were sung from the Aegean Isles to the edges of the Red Sea. And yet, Athena's lips curled downward. Still can't compare to Helios, she whispered to the wind. HADES was strength and bravery made flesh, but Helios had been something more. A thinker. A builder. A unifier. Helios had not just killed monsters, he had raised cities, built law, and bound tribes into nations with nothing but vision and will. HADES fought for mankind. Helios fought as mankind. Still, Athena watched him with a thoughtful gaze. If gods truly needed help in the war to come, if mortal arms were required to face the impossible, then this one, this son of Olympus, would be the first sword she would raise. Silently, she extended her hand, her fingers glowing faintly with divine light. A mark appeared on HADES' back, a hidden glyph of wisdom and war, visible only to those who walked among the heavens. Later, she murmured. Not now. Not yet. I'll bring you with me soon. Then, with a flutter of wings that did not beat and a gust of wind that stirred no dust, Athena rose into the sky. She soared westward, high above the mountains. The stars watched her, silent and cold. The wind whispered across her skin, brushing the gold-trimmed edge of her cloak. But as she cut through the sky, she felt it, a tremble. A ripple. Something was wrong. The sensation was like oil on water, like shadows slithering against the back of her mind. Unease coiled around her like a serpent. She accelerated. Faster. Higher. Sharper. But then, completely unaware and caught completely off guard, something struck. A pressure, heavy, deadly, descended around her. The sky seemed to shiver. Birds in flight scattered in terror. And from behind her, a whisper of movement. Athena twisted, instincts honed through eons flaring. A spear, black as obsidian and wreathed in red flame, ripped through the air just inches from her throat. She barely dodged, the edge slicing her cheek like a whisper of death. She spun through the sky, halting midair, summoning her spear and shield in twin flashes of divine brilliance. Her shield shimmered, her spear etched with the secrets of battle. She turned, gaze narrowed, and froze. There, standing upon the very air as if it were solid ground, was a being with a very familiar presence. Her eyes narrowed. A giganti/giant, born of Gaia as their king claimed, shaped by her wrath and anger towards the Olympians. Truthfully, not even Athena herself is confident in this battle. The giant was as tall as a temple, with skin like stone and muscles rippling with volcanic power. His eyes burned red, and his long black hair whipped like serpents in a storm. He wore no armor, only chains that still clung to his limbs like ornaments from a forgotten war. His spear, jagged and burning, pulsed with raw hatred. "I thought you'd die from that," he said, his voice like boulders grinding beneath the earth. "You're quite quick. I guess that is to be expected from a goddess." Athena's grip tightened on her spear. "Don't think a mere sneak attack can finish me off. I am Athena, goddess of wisdom. I will not fall for such underhanded tactics. State your name, giant, so I may write tales of your defeat." He grinned, a savage, cruel thing. "I am Enceladus, born of Gaia, and I have come to take your head, goddess of wisdom." Athena's heart pounded once, hard. "You came for me? Well then, you are doomed to fail." "So you say, but I'm sure you realize that I am far superior to you," he said, spinning his spear. "Don't worry, you are just the first of many. Our mother gave her order. The time of gods and mortals ends. The age of giants begins." Lightning surged across the sky. The clouds spiraled in unnatural arcs, forming a vortex above them. Athena raised her shield, stepping into a battle stance, her voice cold and commanding. "Come, then. Let me remind you why Olympians are the rulers of the cosmos." With a roar, Enceladus lunged. Their weapons clashed, a shockwave exploding through the heavens. Spear met spear, shield shattered flame, and the night sky lit with the fire of gods. Athena's eyes widened for a moment. From this exchange alone, she knew that Enceladus had far surpassed her in strength. But she twisted beneath his next strike, her movement sharp and fluid, delivering a blow to his ribs that cracked the sky. Enceladus laughed, blood dripping from his mouth, and retaliated with a sweep that tore through the clouds. The battle raged above the mortal world, unseen, but felt in sudden gusts of wind and distant thunder. Down below, HADES paused mid-stride, brow furrowing. He felt something. Something vast and ancient, battling just beyond the veil. Unknown to him, that in that moment, far above, Athena fought not just for her life but for the future of both gods and mortals. The sky cracked open with thunder. Lightning flared in wild streaks across the sky as Athena soared backward, her shield slammed by a force that sent her hurtling through the clouds. She caught herself mid-flight, gritting her teeth as her arm throbbed from the impact. A sharp pain radiated up her shoulder, bruised, maybe even fractured. Enceladus stood tall among the clouds, his jagged spear dripping with divine ichor. Not his, but hers. He laughed. "Is that all, daughter of wisdom?" he roared, his voice shaking mountaintops. "You are small, so small. I guess even if the owl's feathers are pretty, they burn all the same." Athena narrowed her eyes, spinning her spear with calculated precision. "You talk too much," she hissed. She shot forward, a streak of silver and flame, but Enceladus was faster than she expected. His spear met hers mid-thrust and batted it aside. The sheer power behind his movement cracked the wind like a whip. Before she could adjust, he struck with his fist. Her shield caught the blow, but the shockwave sent her crashing into a mountain of floating stone that shattered under her weight. Dust and divine sparks scattered in all directions. Athena rolled to her feet, knees bent, chest rising. "He's stronger than I expected," she admitted grimly. "Far stronger." But strength wasn't everything. She was Athena. Wisdom. War. Precision. Strategy. And he, for all his raw might, was swinging like a blind beast. Enceladus lunged again, grinning wide, believing the battle nearly won. His spear slashed toward her neck, fast and brutal. But this time, she anticipated it. Athena ducked low and stepped inside his guard, driving the butt of her spear into his gut. It sank in deep. He gasped, and she was already twisting around behind him, jamming her knee into the back of his. The giant stumbled, caught off balance. She was on him like lightning. Strike. Dodge. Feint. Cut. Her spear danced across his legs, slicing tendons and knees. He swung blindly, but she was already above him, driving her spear straight into his shoulder with all her strength. It pierced through flesh and bone, and he howled as black blood exploded into the air. They spiraled in the air, locked in divine combat. Clouds split. The stars dimmed. And below them, the mortal world shivered. Animals screamed in terror. Rivers twisted. The moon cracked and bled like their intense battle sent shockwaves throughout the world. On Mount Olympus, gods paused. Zeus, seated on his storm throne, felt it like a wound in his chest. "Athena," he murmured, standing. "And that presence. She's fighting a giant." Apollo looked up from the strings of his lyre. Hermes paused mid-step, sandals glowing. The heavens trembled. Without a second thought, Zeus flew towards the battlefield, with Apollo and Hermes following behind him. Back in the fight, Athena didn't stop. She spun once, then drove her spear through Enceladus' throat, the divine metal erupting from the back of his neck. He gurgled, blood spraying in molten arcs. She didn't let up. She summoned all her strength and drove her shield against his face, smashing him backward. Then, in one final motion, she ripped her spear free and hurled it with such force that it tore through his chest and launched into his skull, blowing his head clean off. The force of it exploded the sky. His body collapsed like a mountain falling into the sea. Headless and lifeless. Athena hovered above him, panting, covered in bruises and divine ichor. Her limbs trembled, but she refused to fall. She had won. Or so she thought. Because at that moment, his body twitched. Black smoke leaked from the neck stump. A sound, low and growing, like laughter echoing from a cave of bones. His head regrew. The flesh rippled, bones cracked, and before her stunned eyes, Enceladus stood once more, whole and grinning, blood still dripping from his lips. "That hurt," he said, his voice colder now. "You got lucky, goddess." Athena stared in disbelief. "How?" Enceladus spat aside a tooth and stepped forward. "Fool. You think a god can kill us? He growled. We were born from Gaia's hatred, from her desire to completely crush the gods of Olympus. He spread his arms wide. As such, we possessed antidivine attributes. Your powers slide off us like water. You could cut me into 1,000 pieces, and I would still come for your throat. Her mind raced. Antidivine? So is this the reason why we must seek the help of mortals? But since mortals can't fight giants, the gods might need to weaken them enough for mortals to deal a fatal blow. I see, she said softly. He only laughed again. Then suddenly, he stopped, stiffened. Eyes turned toward the east. Lightning. Golden light. 3 presences tore through the sky like stars on fire. Zeus. Apollo. Hermes. They were almost here. Enceladus growled, disappointment flickering in his gaze. TCH, saved by your father, he sneered. You're lucky, Athena. The shadows around him rose, thick and oily as the air turned cold. Tell your kin, he said, fading into smoke and darkness. The war is coming. The real war. And you, none of you, are ready. Then he was gone. Silence returned. Athena floated in the shattered sky, wounded and shaken, her shield cracked, her spear trembling in her grip. Moments later, Zeus arrived, thunder crashing in his wake. He saw his daughter, and his eyes went wide. Athena, I'm fine, she said softly, even though she wasn't. Zeus nodded. That's good. Now where is that giant? Did he flee? Athena sighed, not bothering to offer a response. Hermes hovered beside her, wide-eyed. What happened here? Athena slowly turned towards him, eyes looking at him like an idiot. Didn't you come here because you felt me fighting against a giant? Idiots. The lot of them. Her family are idiots. Hades sat in his office. The air within was deathly still, save for the soft humming of countless fragmented souls suspended midair before him. A constellation of memory shards, regrets, and identities fractured beyond repair. He observed them in silence. He was trying to see if he could uncover the creature who has been trying to implant knowledge beyond this era into the minds of mortals. But it yielded no result. However, he did confirm his guess that something or someone was already eliminating any influence of that creature. Although it might seem ruthless, Hades would rather have that than some alien life form completely wreaking havoc in the overworld. As he thought that, he felt a tremor from the overworld. A fight has broken out. He looked up. Far above, beyond the veil of the underworld and through the skein of divine perception, a flare of power rippled across reality, distant, but unmistakable. A clash. A goddess against a giant. His niece Athena, against one of his children, Enceladus. He tilted his head, feeling like due to his bloodline, the giants have gotten quite stronger than they are supposed to be. Even Athena, arguably the strongest Olympian after Zeus and Poseidon, was struggling against Enceladus, who wasn't even amongst the strongest giants. How noisy. Hades whispered, sighing. Although their fight haven't reached the underworld, but Hades can perfectly feel and hear it. Despite so, Hades didn't make a move. He merely watched, eyes glowing with that quiet, timeless light that had outlived empires. The battle had begun, the first true battle of the Gigantomachy. Athena against Enceladus. His pale gaze lingered on the celestial echoes for a moment. Then he exhaled a long, weary breath and returned to the floating puzzle before him. Souls twisted in silence. He had been collecting them for weeks now, even halting his usual duties to study their essence. He traced one shard with his finger. A mother's soul, torn in half. Her memories flickered, laughter, sunlight, a child's name, and then darkness. Screaming. A voice not her own speaking through her. Then, knowledge that went beyond this era poured into her mind, completely driving her into madness. Hades couldn't see what the woman had seen, as something seemed to be erasing its presence. She couldn't handle the knowledge in what she had seen and lost her mind, eventually taking her own life. And this wasn't just a first case, there were many others like her. It feels like they were used as an experiment to see how humans would react when forcefully inserted with knowledge beyond understanding. Hades frowned. What touched you? He murmured. He had returned to Nyx's domain thrice already, hoping to ask the primordial of night if she had sensed the same disturbance in the darkness. But she had been absent, her throne empty, her realm colder than usual. He wasn't really disappointed. After all, Nyx has always been aloof. Hades himself had never seen her after they had their first intimate moment. But still, having her, the first creation to appear in the cosmos and the closest to chaos, would certainly help him uncover all these mysteries. He pressed 2 fingers to the soul shard again and whispered an old incantation of truth-revealing, a spell created by Hecate that only worked in the Underworld's core. It showed him layers beyond identity. And just like that, that eerie feeling of being stared at by something one cannot see engulfed him. He flinched. There it was again. Something ancient. Something not from this world. Not a titan. Not a giant. Not an Olympian. Not a primordial. It was like something had stitched a foreign language into the soul, not just memories but command lines, infecting the very code of being. And it was spreading. Fast. If he wasn't holding on to these souls, they would slowly disintegrate and vanish from existence. No afterlife. No reincarnation. Nothing. They'll just disappear. Hades canceled the spell and leaned back on his office chair. Suddenly, the massive obsidian door to his study opened with a slow groan. Hades did not turn. He already knew the scent, the gate, and the soft pulse of wheat and warmth in the air. "Demeter," he said. His sister stepped inside, dressed in robes of deep gold and olive, her face unusually grim. No flowers in her hair. No scent of harvest on her breath. She said nothing at first, simply looking at him. Hades didn't press. He waited for her to speak. Finally, after a moment, she spoke. "I need to return to the overworld," she said. "Something urgent has come up." Hades studied her. She stood stiffly, fingers clutched at her sleeves, gaze not quite meeting his. "Is it because of the giants?" She hesitated but replied, "Yes." But she said no more. Hades nodded once, without prying further. "Go, then." Demeter blinked in mild surprise, as though she'd expected resistance. Instead, he turned his gaze back to the fragmented souls. His voice, though calm, carried weight. "I won't stop you. But be careful. The overworld is, you know, currently in a state of war." Demeter's expression softened. She walked forward and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Thank you, brother." Then she turned and left, golden robes trailing behind her like falling wheat stalks. The door shut. Hades remained still for a long time. Then he lifted a new shard. This one belonged to a soldier, a proud warrior who had once defied death to save his comrades. Now the shard trembled, as though it were alive, and whispered a sound in a language Hades did not recognize. It was not human. It was not divine. He placed the soul into a floating bronze casing, sealed it with primordial script, and locked it within his sanctum. Whatever is happening in the overworld will surely shake the very cosmos. And he wasn't talking about the gigantomachi, but the foreign thing that gave those knowledge to humans. He doesn't know who or what it is yet, but since it's hiding itself, it means it wasn't confident in taking on the strongest beings of this universe just yet. Hades will make sure it stays that way. He will never allow anything to mess up the world's order. Hades finally stood, walking to his darkened balcony that overlooked the vast core section of the Underworld, his great city, Nox, glittering beneath him like an inverted constellation. He stared upward through the blackened dome of the sky, eyes unblinking. "Hide. Hide whatever you are. Because once I find you, I will carve your screams to the void and make it echo for eternity." The air inside of a cavern was thick with the scent of earth and fire, the flickering shadows casting grotesque figures on the walls. Enceladus kneeled before the towering figure of the Porphyrion, the king of giants, the greatest of giants, his presence both commanding and terrifying. His colossal form was swathed in a cloak of darkness, his eyes glowing with an unnatural intensity, like 2 burning stars in the cold void. His voice was deep, a rumble like the breaking of mountains, but there was no anger in it, only an eerie calm. "Enceladus," Porphyrion's voice echoed, sending tremors through the stone beneath them. "Tell me the results of your mission." Enceladus bowed his head low, the weight of the words he had to speak pressing down on him. He had failed. He had come so close, yet Athena had proven herself more than just a goddess of wisdom. She was a warrior in her own right, one that had nearly bested him. But he would not show weakness to the king. The giants were built on pride and on power, and he would not falter now. I failed, my king. Enceladus spoke with a measured tone, trying to conceal the frustration gnawing at his soul. Athena proved to be a more troublesome opponent than I anticipated. Although I was stronger, she was far more skilled and experienced. But I was able to prevail over her. However, as I was about to deliver the final blow, I sensed Zeus and the other Olympians approaching. I deemed it best to retreat, to fight another day. Porphyrion remained silent, his immense form unmoving, as if contemplating his words. His gaze, unfathomable and distant, never wavered. It was as though he was listening to something beyond the realm of mortals and gods, something far more ancient. He did not express anger nor disappointment. He simply hummed, a low vibration that resonated through the air. I see, the king rumbled, his voice a soft, unsettling thunder. And what of the antidivine properties engraved in our very soul? Have they proven as useful as we hoped? Enceladus straightened slightly, the tension in his body rising. He had hoped to leave that part of the report until later when he had far more results, but it was inevitable. The truth of their nature could not be ignored. Yes, my king, he said, his voice tinged with a mix of awe and fear. Our bodies, our very essence, seem to be a natural counter to divine power. The antidivine properties are profound. We are barely harmed by their divinity, and their attacks only serve to tickle us. The Olympians, gods like Zeus and Athena, are nothing before us. We are immune to their powers. Porphyrion's eyes glimmered with approval, though his expression remained unreadable. He leaned forward slightly, the weight of his gaze bearing down on Enceladus like the pressure of 1,000 storms. So it is true, the king muttered. Our strength is beyond them. And our bodies resist their divinity that they are so proud of. Enceladus paused for a moment, wanting to say that there isn't much evidence or results to conclude that. But the king's next question startled him, as it cut to the heart of everything they had fought for. And what of the mortals? Porphyrion asked, his voice growing darker. Can they kill us? Enceladus hesitated. Mortals, weak, fragile, insignificant beings. How could they ever stand against the might of the giants, much less destroy them? But even as he thought, a nagging doubt lingered at the back of his mind. Could they? Could they really? Humans have no divinity. Their antidivine properties are completely useless. So can they really? Perhaps, my king, Enceladus admitted reluctantly. But mortals are weak. Their weapons are crude, their armies small. Even their greatest heroes would struggle against us. They do not pose a threat. The king's eyes flared with an intensity that seemed to shake the very foundations of the cavern. The room seemed to grow darker, colder, as if Porphyrion himself was drawing power from the very depths of the earth. You do not understand. The king's voice was low and dangerous. Mortals might be weak, but they might be able to kill us. What if gods would weaken us and have mortals kill us? What then? Enceladus could feel the cold rage radiating off the king, and his unease grew. He couldn't understand why Porphyrion, usually so calm and collected, seemed to be far more agitated than before. What would you have me do? Enceladus asked, voice faltering just slightly. The king's answer was swift and merciless. Lead the giants, he commanded, his tone absolute. I want you to eradicate the mortals now, before they become a problem. We will burn their cities to ash. We will crush their heroes beneath our feet. Leave none standing. The mortals must be wiped from the face of this world. Enceladus stiffened, his mind racing. Wiping out mortals? Destroying them wholesale? Why? They are weak and feeble. They pose no threat to them whatsoever. Not to mention killing mortals would just invite all sorts of trouble. He had not anticipated such a reckless command. But, my king, Enceladus began, hesitating. Our father, Hades, would not like that. He is the lord of the Underworld, and he governs the souls of the mortals. If we destroy them, Porphyrion raised a hand, his expression unchanging. Lord Hades will not interfere. He will understand. I am his most loyal follower. And my will is as strong as his. The king's eyes narrowed. He will not stand in our way. Enceladus glanced down, conflicted. Porphyrion had always been a staunch believer of Hades, fiercely loyal and unwavering, But this was different. Destroying the mortals would mean defying the very nature of Hades' rule. It would mean breaking the natural order of life and death. But Enceladus knew better than to question the king's authority. Porphyrion had always been a steady anchor for the giants, and now, he was the only path forward. Enceladus swallowed hard, steeling himself for the task. "I will do as you command," he said, voice quiet but resolute. As Enceladus turned to leave, something caught his eye. A fleeting vision, an abyss-like eye forming in the center of the king's forehead. It was massive, pulsating with an otherworldly presence that felt colder than death itself. For just a fraction of a second, the abyssal eye seemed to stare directly at him, a silent warning, and then it disappeared, as if it had never existed. He shivered, as if his entire being was broken down and observed before being repaired back up. It was only for a moment, but Enceladus felt like it lasted for eternity. Taking a deep breath to calm himself, he continued to leave. Enceladus did not speak of it. He trusted his king, but there was something about that eye, that presence, that unsettled him. Still, he held his tongue, for what was a giant without his loyalty? With his mind heavy with doubt, Enceladus left the cavern. The king's command was clear. The giants would move against the mortals. The world would burn. The age of the gods would end. And yet, that single eye remained on his mind, not leaving his thoughts even for a second. In the cave where the giants hid, there is the deepest chasm of the world, far from the songs of birds or the laughter of men, where the roots of the mountains drank molten fire and the air was thick with the scent of brimstone and blood. There sat a throne carved from obsidian and bone. Upon it reclined Porphyrion, king of the giants. The chamber was vast, lit only by the slow glow of lava streams and the faint pulses of divine runes etched into the walls by ancient hands, runes whose meanings had long since been forgotten by the gods who feared them. His golden crown rested lopsided on his tangled mane of hair, and his brow furrowed in rare contemplation. His massive hand rubbed the side of his temple, fingers brushing against coarse skin that seemed too tight, too brittle. Something was wrong. Porphyrion can feel it. Not in the situation, but with him. Something is wrong with him. Mortals. Porphyrion muttered under his breath. What foolish creatures. Fragile. Short-lived. Arrogant. And yet. He paused, leaning further back into his throne, the stone groaning beneath his titanic weight. To think they are the ones who can kill us. They are a threat, and they must. He frowned, shaking his head. No. Father would disapprove. He grimaced. Hades. The name alone carried gravity. Porphyrion had only met the Lord of the Dead a few times since they were born. Despite being his children with the primordial earth, Hades barely paid any attention to them, treating them failed products. All of them, with the exception of Nykiria, their sister and the one beloved by Hades and Gaia. Though none of the giants expressed any emotion, they all felt intense jealousy and hatred for that sister of theirs who took all their parents' attention. But he digresses. Porphyrion knew that launching a campaign to exterminate mortals would displease his father. Hades had long kept the balance of life and death, managing the cycle without sentiment but with a relentless devotion to order. To flood the underworld with 1 billion untimely souls? That would be chaos. It would earn not just the ire of Hades but all of the gods who rely on mortal faith to live. Porphyrion's hand fell from his head and rested on the arm of the throne. His breath slowed. His gaze became vacant. He knew he shouldn't. But why? But why do I feel that he would allow it? He didn't understand this thought. It wasn't his. Or was it? He couldn't tell anymore. His mind felt fogged, as if someone had whispered in his dreams and made him believe it was his own idea. And just as he thought of that, a strange heat swelled behind his brow. Without warning, a third eye, silent, lidless, abyssal, opened on his forehead. He did not realize it. It looked around the chamber, scanning the flickering shadows. Its pupil was not a circle or a slit, but a swirling spiral, deep and eternal, like the mouth of a black hole. It gazed. It observed. It measured. Then, as suddenly as it came, it vanished. The eye closed. And Porphyrion, unaware it had ever appeared, blinked slowly, shaking off a sense of dizziness he couldn't explain. He seems to have thought of something just now, but he forgot. Well, no matter. For now, he must eliminate the threat to their lives. And by that, he meant mortals. Far away, high atop a primordial mountain that pierced the sky and reached the stars, Gaia, the Earth Mother, stirred in her sleep. Her domain was vast. It was not merely the mountains and forests but the soul of the world, the raw, living foundation upon which existence stood. She existed in silence, half slumbering in her sacred domain where even gods dared not disturb her. But now, she frowned. What is that? Her voice, though soft, cracked the stone around her peak. She reached out with her power, primordial, ancient, infinite, and swept through the flows of reality. And there it was, a small, subtle presence, like a hairline fracture in the firmament of her domain. A whispering presence belonging neither to a divine nor mortal. It was alien. A foreign presence she hasn't felt since the dawn of creation. But Gaia didn't care about any of that. It had dared to reach into the realm of a primordial, and so it will vanish. Gaia's presence surged like an earthquake through the spiritual plane. Her will, raw and ancient, slammed down on the presence like a mountain falling on an insect. She did not need to see the intruder. She did not need to know its name. She crushed it beneath her essence, suppressing it utterly. The presence recoiled and vanished into the dark corners of the cosmos. Gaia didn't bother chasing. She wasn't interested in anything beyond her domain, no matter how curious she was about the intruder after all. She has far more important matters than paying attention to some foreign presence. Like watching Olympus fall, for example. Meanwhile, in the dim halls of the Underworld, where torches burned without flame and rivers of memory whispered lullabies to the dead, Hades sat at a marble table. The dining hall was austere but grand, with obsidian columns that reached up into a ceiling carved with constellations only the dead could see. And in it, 3 figures can be seen having dinner with Hades. Aphrodite, in her resplendent beauty, sipped wine from a silver goblet beside him. Hecate, cloaked in shadow and flickering candlelight, quietly ate from a bowl of pomegranate seeds. And Hera, regal and composed, engaged in light conversation with Hecate about the effects of the war against giants on Olympus. Nycteria was currently being taken care of by Thanatos, who is surprisingly good with children. Hades rarely spoke during meals, but he enjoyed these moments of peace. It was when he was about to take a bite of his food when suddenly, he froze mid-motion. The fork in his hand trembled slightly before clinking softly onto the plate. His eyes narrowed. That calm, unshakable aura he wore like armor cracked for just a moment. "Did you feel that?" he asked, his voice low, like thunder buried in the earth. The 3 goddesses turned to him. Hecate blinked, frowning. Aphrodite paused, tilting her head. Hera's brows knitted with concern. They stared at each other before turning back to Hades and shook their heads. "If you're talking about how you feel hot and bothered, that's me," said Aphrodite, raising her hand. "I've been using my authority to raise your lust in hopes that you push me down and have your way with me." Hecate frowned at her. "That's why I felt an annoying buzz trying to mess with my mind. It's you." Aphrodite smirked but said nothing. Hera remained silent, simply staring at Hades. "What is it?" "Something just entered my domain," Hades answered, rising slowly from his seat. "It feels slightly similar to the one I felt when I was investigating those fragmented souls." Hecate was the first to stand beside him, her voice grave. "Is it trying to invade our realm?" "No," he said. "It merely observed for a brief moment and did nothing." Aphrodite leaned forward. "Is it gone now?" "Yes," Hades answered, staring at the darkened wall as though it might speak to him. "It vanished as soon as I turned to it. Whatever it was, it didn't want to be seen. I couldn't even pinpoint its location." "Then we should increase our vigilance." Hera said, "I will order the gods and divine spirits to always be cautious and report anything they find suspicious." Hades nodded. "Although it probably won't help as much, it's still better than doing nothing." Far beyond the sight of gods, mortals, or even primordials, in the dark tapestry of the uncharted part of the world, the foreign entity blinked. It had probed and touched the minds of kings. It had whispered lies as truths. It had worn Porphyrion like a mask. It had tested Gaia's strength and vanished before being consumed. And it even dared peek at the king of the dead. All this so it can make plans ahead to make sure it can consume this universe. It can no longer wait. Whatever is trying to stop the advancements of mortals is doing a good job, even if it can do nothing about it. So it decided to just consume this universe even if it's premature. It wouldn't help it much, but it's better than waiting for nothing. To do that, it would use the giants. After all, it is still too weak to confront any of the strongest beings in this universe. But it won't be long. Soon it will devour all of creation. Atop the peak of Mount Olympus, where the sky brushed against the divine marble columns and the air shimmered with divine energy, a rare event was unfolding, one that sent ripples across realms both divine and mortal. A meeting of the gods had been called. But this time, it wasn't Zeus, the king of Olympus, who had called. No, this summons came from Athena, the goddess of wisdom, strategy, and war. Word of her call traveled faster than Hermes on his swiftest day, echoing through every mountain and vale, whispered by the winds, and etched into the firmament of the divine tapestry. Gods and goddesses of all ranks, from the mighty Olympians to the obscure river deities, paused whatever quarrel or pleasure they were indulging in. For when Athena, the wisest of all deities, had called, none dared ignore her. Even Zeus, seated upon his throne with thunder curling lazily around his fingers, blinked in surprise. He had called for this meeting several times, summoning all who bore the ichor of the divine to heed his command. And more often than not, only half of Olympus responded. The others ignored him, citing divine matters, sulking grudges, or simply avoiding another of his long-winded declarations of authority. But now, within mere hours of Athena's summons, the halls of Olympus were teeming with gods. They came. Astrea, the most indifferent out of all Olympians, preferring to go her own way and not participate in whatever is happening in Olympus. Artemis, one who is far more interested in chasing after a divine beast to hunt than attending an Olympus meeting. Ares, who would usually be far too busy training his children and supporting wars, also decided to come as quickly as possible. Poseidon, who hated Athena the most, also came to this meeting. Because he knew, as much as he hates the goddess of wisdom, she wouldn't call for a meaningless meeting. So something of great importance might have happened. Even the minor and lesser gods crowded into the amphitheater. This alone speaks to just how much influence Athena, as the goddess of wisdom, has compared to the king of gods. If Athena wasn't Zeus' most beloved daughter, he would have already sent her to Tartarus for being a threat to his rule. Athena stood at the heart of the chamber, dressed in bronze and white, her shield aegis gleaming, her gaze sharp enough to silence even Poseidon before he could make a snide comment. She raised her voice, not loud, but clear, each word carrying the gravity of millennia. "I have called you here," she began, "not for politics, not for squabbles of domain, not for pride." The gods leaned in. Ares rolled his neck and crossed his arms. Hermes stilled. "I have called you because I was attacked by the giants." A murmur spread like wildfire. The gods looked to one another, confused and concerned. Giants attacked Athena? Have they finally decided to come out from wherever they are hiding and start the war? Ever since their declaration of war and attack on Olympus, they have remained silent. "I am no stranger to combat," she continued. "Nor am I unfamiliar with foes who seek to strike down Olympus. But the giants are far more powerful than I initially thought. I was utterly defeated." Gasps erupted across the chamber. Even Apollo's usual glow seemed to dim. Not only that, they are practically born to be our antithesis. Their bodies are greatly resistant to divine attacks, and they can easily shrug off whatever I throw at them. She let those words sink in, eyes scanning the room. And worst of all, no gods can kill them. According to them, having been born to be a literal god slayer, they cannot be killed by any divine beings. More murmurs. A few of the lesser gods looked downright terrified. Zeus leaned forward now, thunder crackling faintly in his throne. "Are you really sure? What if I vaporize them from existence with my lightning?" Athena turned to him. "I don't know. But the giant really did come back to life after I killed it. So for now, it's safe to assume that they cannot be killed by gods either." A stillness fell over Olympus, heavier than any thundercloud. "I only survived because of the arrival of Father, Apollo, and Hermes," she said. "It ran away after sensing them." Poseidon slammed a fist on his knee. "What madness is this? Nothing withstands the full fury of Olympus." Athena nodded. "That is what I thought. But what I have fought proved otherwise. These giants aren't mere rebels, they are a threat to our existence." She let the term echo. Hephaestus frowned deeply. "Like a poison forged for gods." "Yes," Athena said. Our strength only makes them stronger. They are not just a threat, they are the harbingers of the end of Olympus. Panic now spread, like the beginnings of a storm. The gods muttered amongst themselves. Some demanded to know where the giants came from. Others accused old enemies of creating them. Athena raised her hand, and silence fell. "There is hope," she said. "Since we cannot kill them, we can seal them. But that would only delay the inevitable. However, perhaps there is a chance we can kill them, with the help of mortals." Now the gods were confused. Zeus raised an eyebrow. "This again? If gods cannot kill them, what makes you think they can? Just because that traitor told you so?" "Yes," Athena replied. "Prometheus is the titan of foresight, and I'm not stupid enough to dismiss his prophecies. He believes the future lies in humanity. I have thought long and hard since then, and I believe he is right. Humans, born of no divinity, unaffected by divine pride or nature, are not hindered by the anti-divine aura the giants exude." "Are you suggesting," Poseidon growled, "that mortals fight battles we cannot win?" Athena met his gaze unflinching. "I am suggesting that they are essential to winning the war. The giants cannot be killed by gods, but they can be killed by mortals." A deathly silence. "That is absurd," Apollo scoffed. "A farmer with a pitchfork defeating a being that withstood Zeus' lightning?" "No," Athena said. "Not as they are now. But if they are trained, if they are guided, if they are armed by us, then yes." "You would have us train mortals?" Poseidon sneered. "Teach them our ways, our secrets? Make them little Olympians." "Yes," Athena said firmly. "But not all mortals. Only those with courageous hearts, with a will to resist faith, and the ambition to burn brighter than any stars. Yes, those mortals called heroes, only they can be of help to us. For they are not lesser than us." "That's blasphemy," Hephaestus muttered. "No, it is the truth," Athena countered. "It is pride that blinds us. The giants were made to destroy us. But we are not only gods. We are stewards of the world. We protect it. And if humanity is the sword that can strike where we cannot, then I say we forge that sword." Many gods looked uncertain, but a few nodded slowly. Apollo's voice broke the tension. "And if we refuse?" Athena looked to the gathered host. "Then Olympus will fall. The titans were chained by us. But the giants are chaos incarnate. They will not be imprisoned. They will only be slain. And if we cannot do it, then we must empower those who can." Zeus stood at last. The king of gods, usually unshaken, now looked solemn. "Then perhaps," he said, "we begin preparations for war. A war that would not be waged by gods alone, but with the help of mortals. The world would change. The age of gods reigning from above was ending. The age of gods standing beside humanity was about to begin. And in the shadow of Olympus, the giants stirred. Deep beneath the bones of the earth, where light dared not wander and ancient heat pulsed through obsidian stone, Porphyrion, the towering king of the giants, stood before his brethren. They gathered by the hundred, monstrous and divine, their bodies forged from chaos and war. Each one radiated a presence that made the ground tremble. They stood shoulder to shoulder in a great obsidian amphitheater carved from the very underbelly of the world, a place older than Olympus, untouched by time, seething with dark energy. Porphyrion, crowned with a helm of black flame and wielding a colossal spear of broken starlight, raised his hand to silence them. The clamor of their hunger, their roars, and their anticipation of violence stilled into breathless focus. "Brothers!" Porphyrion's voice boomed like a god's thunder, shaking the cavern. "For too long we have waited in the shadows. For too long we have watched as those who proclaimed themselves as rulers of the cosmos destroyed the very world. But that ends today." His words echoed like war drums. He stepped forward, tall as a mountain, muscles rippling with power. His eyes glowed like twin furnaces, and the air itself twisted around his form. Behind him, monstrous shapes stirred, dozens of colossal figures, each born of rebellion and wrath. Olympus. He said the name with venom. They claimed dominion over all. They cast our brothers, the Titans, into Tartarus. They perverted the land that is our mother. They built their golden cities on our mother's suffering. They have no respect for the primordial of earth who have given them everything. A snarl erupted from the horde. One giant smashed his fist against the stone. Another roared to the ceiling, causing dust to rain down from above. But today, we must make them pay for their sins. Porphyrion's voice grew quiet now, but no less deadly. We are the rage of earth, born to punish the gods. The blood of life and death flows within our veins. We are the end of the age of false gods. He raised his spear toward the center of the amphitheater, where a massive chasm opened into swirling darkness. And thanks to Clitius, Porphyrion continued, we now possess a new legion, one born not of divine spark, but of nightmares. From the abyss, the earth growled. Crawling up from the black was something monstrous. Twisted beasts, forged by Clitius' experiments in the dark, emerged into the firelight, things with too many limbs, with bone for armor and molten blood. Some were wolf-shaped and snake-like, others looked like mockeries of men with gaping maws and spines of steel. Their eyes glowed with an eerie green fire, the mark of Clitius' touch. They will burn the mortal world, Porphyrion declared, and consume the very earth the gods pretend to protect. The humans will cry for their deities. But Olympus will not answer. A murmur of approval rose. Because we will be there, he bellowed. We will strike Olympus directly, with the full might of our race. While Clitius monsters purge the land, we shall storm their gates. No divine sanctuary, no shining temple, no high throne shall stand. We will uproot their marble halls and cast them into the pits of despair. The giants howled. Their roars shook the underground hall like a quake. Porphyrion raised his spear high, and thunder cracked above them. Let the heavens fall, he thundered. Let the stars weep blood. Let the age of the gods end. And in a flash of lightless flame, the giants vanished, swallowed into shadow, scattering across the realms like a plague. Somewhere in the mortal world, a peaceful kingdom nestled between silver rivers and gentle hills now screamed in terror. It had once been a place of learning and beauty, its marble towers rising like lighthouses of culture and knowledge. Now those towers cracked and fell, flames licking their spires as shadows tore through the streets. Monsters poured from the forests and valleys like floodwater, beasts with burning eyes and limbs like weapons. Men, women, and children screamed as fire rained from the sky, unleashed by flying serpents whose scales shimmered like molten steel. Horrors crafted by Clitius, the dark genius of the giants, spared nothing. Giant hounds that breathed freezing mist ran through the streets, locking victims in blocks of ice before shattering them with laughterless howls. Centipede-like creatures the size of carriages burrowed beneath the earth, erupting beneath town squares to consume mortals in gaping maws lined with stone teeth. The kingdom's defenders, knights and warriors, fought valiantly, but their blades broke on thick hides, and their arrows bounced harmlessly from bone-carapaced skin. A boy screamed as a shadow loomed over him, but just as the monster lunged, a figure in golden armor tackled it aside. A mortal hero, brave and foolish, who had never faced a beast like this. He would not live long. And this was only the beginning. Elsewhere, in a mountain town at dusk, golden fields of wheat once swayed gently beneath the wind, fields that fed an entire region. Now they were scorched black, reduced to ash by monsters whose breath was flame and lightning. A village elder stood on a hill, watching with tear-filled eyes as dragons, if they could be called that, swept down and set fire to everything he had ever known. These beasts were not of nature or myth. They were birthed in defiance of the natural order. Flame erupted as a barn exploded, lightning cracked as a silo burst open in a shower of sparks, and the screams of villagers pierced the night. The monsters moved with intelligence, with intent. They weren't merely hungry. They were exterminating. The old man dropped to his knees, clutching a handful of burnt soil, whispering, "Where are the gods?" But no answer came. In the distant sky above it all, high above the clouds, cloaked in a tempest of black storm and fire, Porphyrion stood on a floating rock fortress that hovered above the battlefield. The wind howled around him, and ash rained like snow. He watched the chaos with grim satisfaction. Beneath him, the mortal world burned. Cities were being swallowed. Fortresses collapsed. The era of men was ending. Behind him, a dozen giants stood, shimmering with power. One of them knelt beside him, Enceladus, the giant who almost killed the goddess of wisdom. "It begins, my king," Enceladus growled. The mortals scream, "Now it is time to attack the gods." Porphyrion said nothing for a moment. He lifted his massive spear and pointed it across the smoking horizon, past burning valleys, past broken cities, toward the peak of Mount Olympus. The shining palace was barely visible from this distance, like a white flame resisting the dark. "Let it fall," Porphyrion whispered. Then louder, "Let Olympus burn." The giants behind him roared and leapt from the sky fortress, vanishing into storms, their descent a rain of wrath upon the heavens. Back atop Olympus. As Athena stood before the gathered gods, a sudden silence swept through Olympus. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. She heard them. The cries. The screams. The desperate prayers of mortals. One after another, every god in the chamber stiffened. Apollo's lyre went still. Astrea clutched her throne. Ares growled lowly. Even Zeus looked to the horizon. They all heard it. A chorus of suffering rising from the world below, millions of voices calling out to their gods. Athena's voice broke the silence. They've begun. No one questioned who. They all knew. The giants had made their move. Eleusis, a small city-state that worshipped the goddess Demeter. Once a major agricultural state, now it was being ravaged and destroyed. Forests once lush with life burned under storms of flame and venom, and rivers ran red where monsters feasted freely. Amid the chaos, laughter echoed, low, twisted, and guttural. The laughter of monsters. Winged beasts soared over farmland, spewing fire that devoured crops and cottages alike. Hulking hounds of shadow galloped across dirt roads, dragging screaming humans behind them like prizes. Spined horrors crawled out from burrowed tunnels, their claws dripping with blood, their eyes wild with unholy glee. And in the center of the razed city, a place of golden wheat and prayerful songs, an immense serpent coiled around the broken remains of a granary, hissing laughter slithering from its many mouths. It reveled in destruction, in the snapping of bones beneath its coils. A place that had once sung to the goddess of life and harvest now smoldered, broken, and violated. Nothing could make them happier. Just then, a light descended. It wasn't fire. It wasn't lightning. It was a warm, pure radiance, like the sun filtered through autumn leaves. It struck the earth like a pillar, shaking the very soil. The monsters froze, their twisted amusement turning into confusion, then horror. A figure stood at the center of the light, cloaked in gold and green, with hair like woven stalks of wheat, eyes glowing with the fury of life itself. Demeter. Her once gentle expression, serene, motherly, was now a storm of wrath. She walked slowly, each step causing grass to spring from the ash. Her sandals touched the blackened soil, and where her feet landed, life bloomed, sunflowers, wheat, and vines, as if refusing to allow decay to remain in her presence. She looked around, her expression turning angrier and angrier by the second. How dare you? She had arrived in the mortal world quite some time ago, but she had chosen to stay with the nymphs whom she left to take care of her garden. It was just now, when she heard the screams of the earth, that she realized something was wrong. She turned towards the monsters, then her voice rang out, not loud, but every living thing heard it. I don't care where you came from, but none of you shall leave this place alive. This I swear, as Demeter, goddess of harvest. The wind howled. Thunder cracked in the distance, not from Zeus, but from the divine anger of a nurturing force betrayed. The serpent hissed and lunged. Its massive jaws opened wide. Demeter raised her hand. Roots exploded from the ground like spears, piercing the beast's body. Vines coiled around its heads and ripped them apart one by one. The creature howled, thrashing, but the land itself had turned against it. Other monsters tried to flee, but from every direction, the ground split and hands of ivy dragged them into the soil. The trees groaned, waking from slumber, moving like titans as they crushed fleeing abominations into pulp. The goddess did not scream. She did not roar. Her anger was still and silent. It was absolute. Where the monsters brought death, she brought judgment. It was not swift nor merciful. And Demeter stood among the ruins like a flame that would never be extinguished. Far away, in a quiet place untouched by war, a temple bathed in silence sat alone on a cliff. Its hearth never went out. Its halls were always warm. And in that sanctuary of flame and family, Hestia knelt before the eternal flame. Her hands trembled. She felt it. The prayers of children who had just lost their parents. The tears of mothers holding lifeless bodies. The shattering of households across the land. It broke her heart. She had long remained apart from war. She did not march with the gods during the Titanomachy. While her siblings battled, she kindled the hearths of the underworld, keeping the warmth of family alive for those who crossed into death. But now, she felt the world burning. Families torn asunder. Villages once protected by her light drowned in darkness. And she could no longer sit idly by. She rose. Her simple robe shifted, glowing with warm red and gold light. The flames in her eyes danced, not playfully, but fiercely. She turned toward the sky. But before she could leave, a soft rustle echoed behind her. "Are you going to interfere, Hestia?" Hestia turned. There, radiant and graceful as ever, stood Rhea, her mother, the Titaness of fertility, motherhood, and generation. Rhea's eyes were ancient, filled with sorrow and love. She stepped forward, reaching out to cup Hestia's face gently. "Can you handle it, child? Unlike your siblings, you lack experience when it comes to fighting." Hestia nodded. "I know. But I cannot bear to feel it anymore. The breaking of homes, of lives. I will not sit idly by as innocent families get destroyed by monsters." Rhea held her gaze. "Be careful. Your flame gives hope to the hopeless. Use it to dispel their worries and ward away any evils." Hestia smiled, a flickering warmth in the silence. Then, without another word, she took flight, ascending through the clouds, her trail a blazing ember against the growing darkness. The state of Harian. The gates of Harian loomed tall, walls of white stone reinforced with divine sigils and mortal craftsmanship. The city sat at the foot of a mountain, the mountain of first dawns, and legend held that humanity's first flame was born here. It was a city of warriors. A kingdom of legends. A sanctuary for those who refused to bow. The kingdom founded by the king who defied the gods and hailed as the greatest king in history. Upon its high ramparts stood a man whose armor shimmered not with magic, but conviction. His cape bore the symbol of Hades, and his eyes glinted like tempered steel. Varn, captain of the Sentinels and leader of Harian's last line of defense, gazed into the horizon. And there, they came. A tide of monsters. A horde of screaming, chittering, charging beasts. Towering war beasts. Lithe stalkers. Serpents with wings and wolves with obsidian skin. From the hills, from the woods, from tunnels dug through the mountains, they came like the end of days. Behind Varn stood the 100 sentinels, each one a hero in their own right. Cloaked in armor passed down from generations, blades kissed by the gods, eyes burning with resolve. They had trained for this. They had sworn their lives to Harian. Varn drew his sword, the ancient steel humming with purpose. He turned to his warriors. "This is the day history remembers. Not for how many enemies we killed, but for how long we stood. This is Harian, the city of heroes. The land where all began. And it will never fall, not while we draw breath." A thunderous cheer shook the walls. Swords rang from scabbards. Shields locked into place. Without hesitation, Varn leapt from the wall, blade first, landing like a comet amid the monsters. The sentinels followed, dropping from the battlements like arrows from the sky. Steel clashed. Flesh tore. Blood sprayed across stone and earth. But they did not falter. The 100 sentinels fought like legends reborn. For Harian. For humanity. For hope. Deep within the earth, Gaia watches. Her brows furrowed seeing her children use those monsters to attack the mortals, knowing full well that it would surely earn the wrath of the king of the underworld. However, she did not stop them. At this moment, all she cares about is the destruction of Olympus and the death of Olympians. Nothing else mattered more. With that, a dark, mysterious aura flickered around her for a moment before disappearing, as if it had never been there. Gaia frowned, sensing some disturbance. She spread her senses but found nothing. She shook her head, thinking it was just her imagination. She turned her gaze back to the land before focusing on Olympus. There, her children, the giants, are about to start their attack. Athena and the gods watched as monsters overran the mortal world, their expression grim. "Those bastards." Zeus growled, "Right when I decided to use the mortals, they actually attacked." "They surely know that mortals can kill them," said Athena. "But aren't they worried that they will anger Lord Hades?" "Humph. Forget about Hades, aren't they worried that they will anger us?" said Poseidon. Athena turned towards the other gods. "For now, we should Before she could finish her sentence, a terrible shadow swept over Olympus. At first, it was subtle, a dimming of the sky, as though clouds had passed over the sun. But then the darkness thickened. It pressed in from every direction, blotting out the golden light of the divine peak, swallowing marble pillars and radiant halls in a suffocating gloom. Wind screamed through the columns. The very air changed, becoming heavy, tainted, and choked with a scent of ash and brimstone. Every god present froze. From Athena's place at the center of the hall where she stood, she felt the shift instantly. Not a storm. Not a divine omen. But something far worse. Her fingers tightened as her expression turned for the worse. A tremor rippled through the marble beneath their feet. Then a second, stronger. Statues cracked. Gold-trimmed ceilings quivered. Goblets trembled on tables. "So here they come," Zeus muttered, eyes narrowing, lightning crackling across his fingers. "This time for sure, I will bury them in Tartarus." And just then, before any command could be spoken, before even Hermes could run, they appeared. Out of the shadows, the giants emerged. Not through the gates, not by storming up the mountain as many had dared to do before. No, they came through the darkness itself, as if the gloom were a curtain pulled aside by hatred. The air tore like fabric, and massive figures stepped forward, colossal, twisted forms, each one different in shape but united in presence. They radiated raw, elemental chaos. Porphyrion, their leader, stared at the gods with his cold, indifferent eyes. "Gods, self-proclaimed ruler of the cosmos, we have come to end your reign." Then, with a unified roar, they launched their assault. Flaming boulders and jagged spikes of dark stone were hurled through the air. They struck Olympus' glowing spires and shattered them in thunderous blasts. Great temples exploded in a spray of divine marble and fire. The Hall of Seasons collapsed in a single blow. The Temple of the Muses fell before a second breath could be drawn. Lesser gods, gods of song, of morning dew, of wind and laughter, cried out in alarm as the first blast struck. They scrambled to flee, wings flaring or feet pounding on shattered stone. But there was no escape. From the shadows that enveloped Olympus, more giants came, some half-beast, some formed of stone and magma, some so large they had to bend to fit among the palace ruins. They struck like natural disasters, tearing lesser gods apart like dry leaves. Divine spirits shattered under claws. Nymphs screamed as the air was ripped from their lungs. One by one, the gods fell, many without even understanding what had struck them. Athena acted first. Her voice was sharp and commanding. "Everyone, get into formation. Do not let them surround us." But it was too late. They were surrounded. Their escape routes were gone. Walls had crumbled. Skies were darkened by the very presence of the enemy. The divine bridges leading to the outer rings of Olympus collapsed as giants ripped them from their moorings and hurled them like weapons. The gods were trapped. Athena turned, eyes blazing with fury and precision. "No choice. Fight with your life on the line." She raised her spear and summoned her shield, Aegis, its ancient power pulsing. Across the courtyard, a thunderous footstep echoed. From the smoke and rubble, Enceladus emerged. He was a giant carved from fury itself, twice the height of any Olympian, with skin like scorched earth and lava veining his arms. His eyes glowed like twin volcanoes, and with each step, the ground cracked. He locked eyes with Athena. "Ah, we meet again," he rumbled. "I couldn't finish you off last time, but this time for sure, I will make sure to erase you." Athena held firm. "That's rich coming from someone whose head I blew up." She stared at his empty hands. "Where's your weapon?" Enceladus smirked, baring jagged teeth. "I don't need a weapon to kill you," he said. "I want to crush your bones with my hands. Snap your spine like a twig. That's how much I hate what you represent. Your entire existence is repulsive." Athena leveled her spear. "For someone who resents our throne, your race seems a bit too eager to replace our rule." The giant snarled. "That is because we will be the ones to rule the cosmos, as it should be." "Then how are you different from us?" "Enough." Enceladus roared as he rushed towards Athena. The goddess of wisdom raised her spear and charged forward as well. Within a blink, they clashed. Enceladus charged with terrifying speed, the earth shaking beneath his steps. Athena sidestepped, pivoting on her heel with a dancer's precision, her spear flashing in a blur. She struck at his side, aiming for a gap in his shifting armor of molten stone. The tip bit in, but only shallowly. Enceladus turned with a snarl and backhanded her with a blow that cracked the ground as it missed, only grazing the edge of her shield. Still, the force flung her off her feet and sent her crashing through a column. She rolled and landed on one knee, shield up. The moment she stood, he was on her again. Fists like falling mountains slammed down where she'd been a second before. Athena weaved and ducked, barely avoiding the crushing force of his bare-handed strikes. Each blow left craters in Olympus' once pristine stone. She slashed with her spear, stabbing into his shoulder, then his thigh, then his side, but each time, the wounds barely slowed him. He laughed. A deep, hideous sound. "You don't get it, Athena," he growled, grabbing a piece of broken statue and hurling it like a cannonball. This won't even tickle us." Athena batted the projectile away with her shield, gritting her teeth. She ducked beneath his next strike and plunged her spear into his abdomen. This time, the strike went deeper, angled just beneath the ribs. Enceladus roared, but instead of retreating, he reached out and grabbed the shaft of her weapon, yanking her forward like a rag doll. With a vicious roar, he smashed her into the ground with one hand, raising his foot to crush her completely. Athena barely rolled aside. His heel shattered the stone where her head had just been. She gasped, then rolled to her feet again, her arm bleeding, her shield dented. Weak. So weak. Is this the limit of an Olympian? Enceladus sneered. She breathed hard. Not in the slightest. Again, they clashed. Their battle spilled across the ruins of Olympus, through what remained of the courtyards, through broken temples and shattered halls. Athena's blows were precise, surgical. She struck at joints, at eyes, and at the base of the skull. She fought like a tactician, like a veteran of 10,000 wars. But it was not enough. For every blow she landed, Enceladus returned 3. For every dodge, every block, her strength waned just a little more. Her muscles burned. Her arms grew heavy. Her divine ichor stained her silver armor. He did not slow down. His strength was unnatural, endless, drawn from the very earth, from Gaia's hatred. Still she stood. Still she fought. And with every movement, every drop of blood, she adapted. She began to predict him. His wild swings. His patterns. She baited him into overextending. To dodge narrowly. To attack places that will leave him wide open. Their fight became a blur of rage and discipline, chaos and precision. Then, with a cry, Athena drove her spear directly into his eye. Enceladus howled, staggering back, half-blind now, ichor and fire spraying from his ruined socket. Athena, wounded and coughing, limped back and raised her shield. "See? No matter how powerful you are, you have no skills to back that up," she muttered. The giant ripped the spear from his eye, snarling. A second later, the injury healed quickly. He grinned. Athena sighed. She forgot about their antidivine properties. We really can't win this if they just keep on regenerating like this. Come on, goddess of wisdom, show me more. Enceladus laughed, his voice echoing throughout Olympus. Athena raised her shield. Their battle has just begun. The battlefield that had once been Olympus' sacred court now burned with chaos and broken stone. Pillars lay shattered. The statues of the muses lay decapitated. Once golden domes were now split and crumbling, and rivers of divine ichor mixed with soot and dust, trickling through the cracks in the floor like the slow bleeding of Olympus itself. Among the fallen columns, a crater lay freshly born, still hissing with smoke. And in the middle of it, Ares stood up. He groaned, cracking his neck and wiping blackened dust from his face. His armor was dented, and blood traced a line down his temple, but his grin never faded. If anything, the pain only excited him. The giant who had slammed him into the ground loomed above, a brutish figure made of jagged obsidian and muscle, his massive fists still pulsing with energy. Ares spat blood and chuckled. "Before we do this properly," he said, rolling his shoulders, "tell me your name." The giant flinched, surprised. Ares pointed at him with a smirk. "Name's important. That's what I always tell my children. If you're gonna kill someone, or if they're gonna kill you, it's only right you know who they are." He cracked his knuckles, fire flickering in his eyes. Me? I'm Ares, god of war. The giant studied him for a moment before replying. Mimas. Ares grinned wider, stepping forward. Well then, Mimas. Let's kill each other properly. He drew no sword. Instead, from the ether around him, he summoned 2 clubs, short, brutal weapons made from celestial steel, thick at the base and tapering with sharp ends. They glowed faintly with divine sigils etched into their length, thrumming with lethal intent. He dropped into a low, tight stance. 1 club high, 1 low, arms loose but coiled like springs. Mimas cocked his head. What is that? Ares chuckled. If you're talking about my club, then it is made by Hephaestus using celestial steel and forged from the heart of a dying star. Although it's not as powerful as Zeus' thunderbolt or Poseidon's trident, they are the best damn weapon you can find, even better than Athena's. He then moved his arms a bit. But if you're talking about my stance, then it is a fighting style you wouldn't understand. Athena gave me a book centuries ago, some crap about discipline and reading. He shrugged. But inside it was something good. A war art from Lord Hades himself. He called it Eskrima. Said he invented it during the Titanomachy. Close combat. Brutal. Fast. Efficient. He smirked and tapped one of the clubs together with a clack. Seems interesting, so I learned it. And really, just as you'd expect from the strongest god, this fighting style is insane. Let me show it to you. Then he moved. A blur of red and steel launched forward. Mimas roared and raised his arms, but it was already too late. Ares struck, left club to the ribs, right club to the jaw, then spun low and cracked the inside of Mimas' knee with a sickening snap. The giant staggered back, bellowing in pain. He never even saw the next blow coming. Ares surged up and smashed both clubs across Mimas' temple in a crisscrossing strike that knocked him sideways. Mimas lashed out blindly with a wide swing. Ares ducked beneath it, laughing the whole time. You giants swing like you're still trying to club titans in caves. You ever hear of footwork? He darted around Mimas like a storm of iron. The clubs moved like extensions of his limbs, spinning, jabbing, and striking from all angles. Each hit was a hammer, each movement carved from war itself. Mimas bellowed, trying to catch him, but every time he lunged, Ares slipped through his reach, leaving welts and dents in the giant's flesh. Come on. Ares shouted gleefully. You're supposed to be our antithesis. I was expecting more. He slammed both clubs into Mimas' shoulders, forcing the giant to one knee. How boring. He stood before the kneeling giant. But well, Athena said you lot can't be killed, let's test it out, shall we? He raised his club, aiming for the giant's head. But just as Ares prepared the finishing strike, a sudden chill raced up his spine. Something came up behind him. Without thinking, he twisted and rolled to the side, just in time. A giant warhammer smashed into the crater he'd stood in, obliterating the stone and sending a shockwave through the battlefield. Ares skidded to a stop and whirled around, eyes narrowing. A new giant stood tall, even broader than Mimas, armor adorned with the skulls of slain beasts. His arms bulged like tree trunks, and his grin was wide and crooked. And who do we have here? Ares stood up straight, resting one of his clubs over his shoulders. For brutes, I didn't expect you guys to know sneak attacks. I heard what you said, the newcomer rumbled. About names. He swung the warhammer casually over his shoulder. I'm Pelorus. Try not to forget it. Ares frowned, turning towards Mimas. TCH. You bring a second guy? Can't I have a one-on-one without someone ruining it? Mimas pushed himself back up, blood trickling down his broken nose. You're good. Too good. I'd be a fool not to accept help. Ares took a breath and stepped back, both clubs up again. Fine. 2-on-1. I've had worse. Pelorus laughed. You really think you can take us both? Ares grinned. Dunno. But you think I'm scared? Not in the slightest. This just makes it even better. The ground trembled as Mimas and Pelorus stepped forward together. Ares exhaled slowly, eyes narrowing in tension. He knew, even for him, fighting 2 titans was almost impossible. If this was a duel, he would have already been berated for abandoning their honor. But this was not a duel. This was war. And in war, no matter what method you use, as long as you win, that's all that matters. They charged at once. Pelorus came from the left, warhammer spinning like a comet. Mimas from the right, fists clenched, teeth bared. Ares moved. He ducked under the hammer and struck Pelorus in the side, but the second giant was faster than expected. He turned with the blow and caught Ares' club mid-swing, yanking him off balance. Mimas was there, smashing a fist into Ares' side. He groaned as he felt his bones crack. Ares grunted and twisted, kicking off Pelorus' knee and flipping backward. He landed hard but didn't fall. "All right," he muttered, "you've got some coordination. Not bad." He charged again. He leapt high, twisting midair, and brought both clubs down in a crushing overhead strike aimed at Pelorus' head. The giant raised his hammer to block, just as Ares intended. At the last second, Ares twisted in the air and redirected both clubs, slamming them into Mimas' chest with brutal force. Ribs shattered. The air exploded from the giant's lungs. But Pelorus was already reacting. He lunged, shoulder-checking Ares and sending him tumbling end over end. Ares rolled to his feet, blood in his mouth. He was grinning. "Oh yeah," he laughed breathlessly. "This is it. Let's fight some more." He feinted left, dashed right, and then danced between them, clubs striking fast and hard. The giants couldn't keep up. His speed was too much. The style was too unpredictable. One club cracked Mimas in the ankle. Another bashed Pelorus in the jaw. But the numbers were starting to tell. Pelorus caught Ares in the side with a glancing blow from his hammer. Even grazing, it sent Ares sprawling, ribs screaming. He coughed, blood splattering the ground. His hands trembled. The giants loomed over him, both wounded, but not finished. "This is the end," Mimas snarled. "Even the god of war falls." Ares coughed again and slowly stood, bleeding, battered, but standing. He held up one club, barely able to keep his hand steady. "You know what I always tell my kids," he rasped. "It's not how many times you fall. It's how many bastards you take down with you." He roared and charged again. Not with desperation, but with joy.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.